Chapter 368. Their team had chased the long-clawed monkey all the way here. Originally, they had been thrown off by the cunning monkey. After losing their target, the team had split up to look for it. The 5 of them had rushed over because they had suddenly heard the movement here. Especially when they heard the long-clawed monkey's cry, they already knew that someone had intercepted the long-clawed monkey. Naturally, they were anxious, but they never thought that the ones who had intercepted their target would be Yanjiao people. They had clearly determined that there were no Yanjiao people following them. This time, they had been closely guarded from beginning to end. Except for a few people who knew about it, even most of the people in their own tribe didn't know about it. Unfortunately, they had unexpectedly encountered it. They had encountered it so far away. They just didn't know if it was a coincidence or deliberate. Were there other Yanjiao people around? If there weren't, with such a young warrior, they should be able to snatch back the prey with the strength of the 5 of them. The 5 of them had been hunting together for a long time, so they only needed a few glances to know what each other was thinking. Especially the leader, after quickly exchanging glances with his companions, he looked at Xiao Xian. I didn't expect to meet Yanjiao people here. Didn't you go out to hunt? The man asked. Xiao Xian didn't say anything. The other party had misunderstood, and he didn't want to correct it. He just let the other party misunderstand. When he didn't understand the situation, the more he said, the more wrong he would be. It was better to listen and get a lot of information. From the tone of the 5 people, Xiao Xian speculated that the tribes these people belonged to were Yanjiao's opponents. Even if they weren't hostile, they were certainly competitors, so he didn't need to be polite. However, this relationship didn't seem to be bad to the point of being irreconcilable. Xiao Xian was thinking about how to treat them. Why do I meet you Yanjiao people everywhere? One of them whispered. His expression was very tangled, with anger and helplessness. His tone was a bit harsh. Although the other party's voice wasn't loud, everyone present heard it clearly. Seeing that the 2 groups didn't seem to have a good relationship, the long-clawed monkey held by Xiao Xian turned its eyes and made a few difficult sounds from its throat. Its tied legs struggled to kick, looking like it was about to be strangled to death. Unfortunately, Xiao Xian didn't say anything, and the 5 people just glanced at it. They didn't care whether it lived or died. I'm really sorry, brother from Yanjiao. This long-clawed monkey is the prey we've been tracking, said the leader. The other party's tone was calm, but they didn't sound too intimate. Even if they tried their best to control themselves, Xiao Xian could still see the tension in their expressions. They were on guard and ready to fight at any moment. Xiao Xian looked at the person who had just spoken and raised his chin. Continue. Continue? Continue what? The leader paused, thinking that Xiao Xian didn't take the long-clawed monkey seriously. He was delighted and said, we can use other prey to exchange with you, a vicious beast of similar level with meat. He emphasized the words level and meat. That should be fine, right? Xiao Xian made a gesture of thinking, and then said to the 5 people, no exchange. You! One of the people couldn't help but point at Xiao Xian and threaten him. So what if you're more powerful? You're only 1 person, and we have 5. In any case, most of the people from Yanjiao should be hunting at this time. This person must have snuck out to play by himself. He actually ran so far. Could it be that he deliberately followed them? No matter what the other party thought, Xiao Xian's expression didn't change in the slightest because of the other party's threat. He said, the 5 of you didn't catch it. You're really capable. Since I caught this long-clawed monkey, it's my prey. What does it have to do with you? The 5 people didn't know that their attitude had been exposed, and that it had also decided Xiao Xian's choice. If they had revealed that they had a good relationship with Yanjiao, Xiao Xian wouldn't have rejected their words so directly and mercilessly. Seeing the other party move, Xiao Xian said again, what, do you want to rob it? If you don't exchange, we can only rob it. The leader of the other party didn't have the calm expression he had before. His eyes suddenly changed, and he was full of murderous intent. Facing such a person with a slightly lower strength would certainly be a lot of pressure. Xiao Xian chuckled. Just with you? They were angered by Xiao Xian's attitude. They knew that the Yanjiao people's threats were mostly ineffective, so they were prepared to rob it. The 5 people suddenly exploded, and water-like totem patterns appeared like waves on their bodies. Among them, there were 2 senior totem warriors and 3 intermediate totem warriors. If they didn't have some strength, they wouldn't have been able to follow them on this secret operation. The 5 people knew that the Yanjiao people's biggest characteristic was their great strength. Therefore, it would be a stupid choice to fight the Yanjiao people with strength. They decided to fight with other things, such as speed and flexibility, as well as their advantage in numbers. Compared to most people, the Yanjiao people's speed and flexibility when hunting was not much inferior, but compared to their advantage in strength, it wasn't paid much attention. From the 5 people's movements, Xiao Xian guessed their strategy. The 2 senior totem warriors rushed towards Xiao Xian from the left and right, trying to trap Xiao Xian in a pincer attack. Facing the totem warriors of 5 strange tribes alone, Xiao Xian did not feel the slightest psychological pressure. In order to facilitate the battle, he grabbed the long-clawed monkey's arm and threw the ferocious beast directly towards a thick tree not far away. At the same time that Xiao Xian threw the long-clawed monkey, the 5 people were happy, especially the 3 in the back. Their footsteps changed, bypassing the place where Xiao Xian was, and directly rushed towards the place where the long-clawed monkey was thrown. Even if its hands and feet were tied by vines, the long-clawed monkey's flexibility was still there. Before, because it was tightly held in Xiao Xian's hand, its neck would have been directly broken if it made the slightest movement. Therefore, it only dared to show weakness and didn't dare to show any devious thoughts. But now, seeing the 2 sides fighting, its brain began to move. Its body that was thrown in the air rotated, and its tied legs adjusted the arc. When it hit the trunk, its legs acted as a good cushion, so it wasn't hurt. Instead, it used this force to bounce away, wanting to take advantage of the chaos to escape. It wasn't that it despised these people, but with its ability, after breaking free, it would certainly be able to get rid of the trouble. If it could get rid of these people chasing it once, it could get rid of them a second time. Unfortunately, it struggled, but couldn't break free. It struggled again, but still couldn't break free. Although this kind of vine was very flexible and not easy to break, the long-clawed monkey really didn't care about this vine. It had been tied up by some tribes with this kind of vine, but it had always broken free. It had long been experienced in dealing with this kind of vine. Many times, it would deliberately show weakness and let itself be tied up, then escape. It would hide in the dark and laugh as it looked at the angry appearance of those people who were jumping up and down. But this time, it made a mistake. It thought that after getting rid of Xiao Xian's control, it could easily break free from the vine, but the fact was not so. No matter how skillfully it tried, its knife-like long claws couldn't hook the vine, let alone cut it. Naturally, it couldn't get out of the vine. The long-clawed monkey was still tied up, and its ability to move was greatly reduced. It didn't run far before it was caught by the 3 people chasing after it. Its resistance was futile, otherwise, it would have to face the knives of these 3 people. These people didn't care whether it was dead or alive. Therefore, the long-clawed monkey, who was caught again, became listless again, obediently being carried away, and its mind was thinking about how to escape. On the other side, Xiao Xian, who was attacked from left and right, quickly retreated a few steps to avoid the siege of the 2 sides. In the face of the people who were closing in on him, Xiao Xian's feet didn't stop, and his body was still running. Facing the knife wind, he twisted his body and leaned to the side, avoiding the opponent's cut. At the same time, he shook his shoulders and directly hit the opponent. In the face of Xiao Xian's strong collision, the opponent gritted his teeth and braced himself to meet this blow. No matter what, he was also a senior totem warrior, why should he be afraid? This person was younger than him, and didn't look as strong as him. This person wasn't one of the most outstanding people in Yanjiao. The 2 forces and the force collided together, and made a muffled sound. If the opponent's momentum was like a surging torrent, then Xiao Xian was like a towering mountain firmly rooted in the earth. Under the collision, the man shook, and his pupils shrank in surprise. He took a few steps back to dissolve the force of the collision, and then looked at the person who didn't even take half a step back. This result showed that he didn't have the upper hand at all. Although he knew that he couldn't win, he didn't expect that there would be such a big gap. Chapter 369. After knocking one person away, Xiao Xian didn't retreat. Instead, he stomped on the ground with both feet and turned around to throw a punch. The power of the punch was like a cannon, no less than the force he used to kick the tree trunk when he caught the long-clawed monkey. In the face of such a powerful punch, the person chasing after Xiao Xian could only dodge first. With the scene of his companion being brutally knocked away, he wasn't stupid enough to underestimate the strength of the other party just because he was young. The Yanjiao people were really a bunch of powerful monsters. No matter how much these two people criticized the strength of the Yanjiao people, they had already achieved their goal. They had delayed Xiao Xian, and then let their three companions take the prey away. Now, even if this Yanjiao person chased again, he might not be able to catch up, right? Just as the two people thought this, Xiao Xian moved. Ignoring these two people, Xiao Xian chased after the three people who took the long-clawed monkey away. When hunting, speed was very important. Many prey in the forest ran like the wind. Even if the body of the wild boar looked heavy, when it really ran at full speed, not everyone could catch up. Therefore, from the beginning of the hunt, the Yanjiao people didn't ignore the importance of speed. It was just that people's impression of the Yanjiao people was always based on the characteristics of great strength, ignoring their other abilities. Xiao Xian's speed was at the forefront of the tribe. Even the two tribe leaders, Ta and Gigu, had to admit this point. Now that his strength had increased, his speed was even faster. Therefore, once Xiao Xian started running, the two people who surrounded Xiao Xian were dumbfounded. Thinking about it, how could someone who could catch the long-clawed monkey be slow? It was still too early for them to relax. Seeing Xiao Xian's movements, the two people could only chase after him, hoping to intercept Xiao Xian. Xiao Xian's totemic power burst out from his body. Under the flame-like totemic patterns, the strength in his muscles pushed his body forward. Xiao Xian lowered his body and rushed forward, moving at high speed and agility in the dense forest. He was not hindered by the bushes in the forest. Xiao Xian's clothes made a beast-like growl as he ran. The insects and birds on the tree couldn't see him clearly. Xiao Xian had already passed by the tree, and two figures were hot on his heels. The rapidly advancing silhouette was like a slithering snake, and the ferocious aura that locked onto its prey was like that of a wolf in the night. The two people chasing after Xiao Xian couldn't help but mutter in their hearts. How did another monster suddenly appear in Yanjiao? If they hadn't bumped into him, how long would he have hidden for? Are you planning to launch a sneak attack in the future? Seeing that Xiao Xian was getting closer and closer to the three people in front of him, the two people chasing after Xiao Xian became anxious. They sped up again, and one of them even took out the tree thorn hidden weapon that he had carefully prepared to deal with the long-clawed monkey. Unfortunately, Xiao Xian didn't give them the chance. The ground in front of him wasn't flat. There were all kinds of twining roots and dense vines. It was easy to get entangled. If he had to take care of these things, his speed would definitely slow down. The three people in front of him were the same. Compared to their initial speed, they had already slowed down. Therefore, in order to catch up with the three people in front of him as soon as possible, Xiao Xian planned to chase them from the air. While chasing after the long-clawed monkey, Xiao Xian had paid attention to the way the monkey ran. He had also tried it. He could have caught the monkey faster, but he still chased it for so long. He was trying to use this method. Every time he caught up, he would kick a tree to scare the monkey, not letting it run out of his sight. Then he would continue to observe its movements until he got the hang of it. Xiao Xian clenched the black dagger, turned around and swung his arm. The two people behind him only heard a cheat sound. The figure in front of them directly used the trunk of a tree to float in the air from a height of about 3 people. On the trunk that he had passed by, there was an additional inconspicuous footprint and a knife mark. Chi! 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 In the dense forest, with a series of sounds, a very fast figure completely left the ground. Xiao Xian didn't care about the bushes on the ground, the old roots buried under the decaying and fallen leaves, the slippery moss and fungus secretions, and so on. Although his running speed was slower than on flat ground, in the forest, he was indeed faster than the other people. Sometimes he could quickly circle around the trees to avoid the hidden weapons thrown behind him. Seeing this scene, the two people who were chasing after him were shocked. He was actually imitating the behavior of the long-clawed monkey. Chase! Chase! They couldn't catch up. Damn! They miscalculated. This Yanjiao's speed was too fast. Seeing Xiao Xian's figure getting farther and farther away, the powerlessness in the hearts of the two people became heavier and heavier. The trees in this forest had very few branches when they were 7 or 8 meters above the ground. The higher they went, the more branches there would be. Even if they stepped on these branches, they would have to avoid other branches. This was also the reason why the long-clawed monkey could run quickly in the forest. It didn't have to worry about obstacles on the ground, nor did it have to face the dense intertwining branches on the trees. It also didn't have to step on the tree trunks to run. It had its own way of running. And now, this way of running was learned by the Yanjiao. The two people also wanted to imitate it, but unfortunately, they used the wrong force. Not only did they not accelerate in the air, but they also slowed down. At this time, there was no time to make more attempts. They had no choice but to continue to step on the branches of the trees or run on the ground. When they saw their 3 companions again, they were already lying on the ground in a daze. They weren't seriously injured. After checking the injuries of the 3 people, the leader's heart was a little relieved. Then should we thank that kid for being lenient on account of the 2 tribes being neighbors? Another person said discouragingly. The others didn't say anything. Obviously, the other party really was lenient. Otherwise, with just the 3 of them, the other party had an absolute advantage in strength and speed. It would be easy for him to kill them. Xiao Xian really was lenient. After all, the purpose of these 5 people was to snatch the prey. When facing Xiao Xian, they only blocked him and didn't really kill him. Xiao Xian would naturally be a little lighter. Was it also caused by him? The leader pointed to several broken trees in front of them that were blocking the road and asked. Yes. The 3 people's faces were dejected. After being slapped to the ground by the other party, they wanted to get up and chase, but the sound of the branches breaking made them stop. The other party was warning them. Thinking about it made their chests tighten. What should we do? Someone asked. What else can we do? Meet up with the others and tell them that the thing was stolen by a Yanjiao. The leader said angrily. Their skills were inferior, so they admitted defeat. It would be difficult for them to take out the thing that entered the Yanjiao's pocket. After going back, the tribes would probably have a good talk with the Yanjiao. Thinking that the elders of the 2 tribes might once again engage in a war of words, they could already foresee how smug the Yanjiao people would be. TSK, so fucking sullen. On the other side, Xiao Xian brought the listless long-clawed monkey to a secluded place and patted its drooping head. Don't play dead. Take out the thing. The long-clawed monkey looked up at Xiao Xian and seemed to be at a loss. Still playing dumb with me. Take out the thing. Xiao Xian tapped its shoulder with the back of his short knife. Those people were so persistent in wanting to bring back this vicious beast, whether dead or alive, there must be another purpose. This long-clawed monkey had something they were looking for. Chapter 370. It was smart enough and seemed to understand human behavior very well. This long-clawed monkey seemed to know a lot. Xiao Xian stared at the long-clawed monkey, staring at it until all of its hair almost stood up. It originally wanted to take advantage of the chaos to escape, but it didn't expect to fall into Xiao Xian's hands. The long-clawed monkey was now very scared. It was still okay when it was caught by those people. It still had the confidence to think of various ways to escape. However, facing Xiao Xian, it felt a lot of pressure. After holding back for a long time, the long-clawed monkey let out a vague cry, as if it was still quibbling. Not giving it? Xiao Xian glanced at the long-clawed monkey. Fine, I'll just kill you. Seeing that Xiao Xian was about to use his knife, the long-clawed monkey became anxious. It let out a few hurried screams. Its eyes were full of pleading as it looked at Xiao Xian. Its eyes reflected light, as if they were full of stars. People who saw these eyes would inexplicably feel a soft feeling in their heart. Xiao Xian was also shaken for a moment, but soon he knew that this was a psychological attack. This long-clawed monkey had a lot of cards up its sleeve. Sure enough, seeing that Xiao Xian recovered in the blink of an eye, the long-clawed monkey's eyes changed. Its eyes that were like a vast starry sky suddenly brewed a storm like a hurricane. Its face also became ferocious. It opened its mouth wide, revealing 2 rows of teeth. For long fangs filled the surrounding air with a bloody aura. If the long-clawed monkey's eyes were as bright and clear as a child's, then now it was like an evil spirit in a scorching hell. Such a sudden change would cause a psychological impact and pressure on people. In the face of such a change, some timid people would be scared out of their wits and would be affected for a long time. Their behavior would also be affected due to panic and make mistakes. Xiao Xian slightly stepped back, but he didn't panic. He raised his hand and placed it not far from the long-clawed monkey's forehead. Under the fierce gaze of the long-clawed monkey, a blue flame emerged from his palm. The long-clawed monkey's ghost-like expression stiffened, and the viciousness in its eyes completely disappeared, leaving only fear. A sharp cry came from its throat as it tried its best to move its legs to avoid Xiao Xian's palm. It wanted to leave this place, but it was bound by the vines and couldn't break free. It couldn't run at all. What do you think? The choice is up to you. If you tell me honestly, I can let you go. But if you still want to hide it, then don't blame me, Xiao Xian said. This time, the long-clawed monkey didn't have the slightest bit of wishful thinking. It knew what that flame was, but it didn't expect to see it in the forest. It was extremely disgusted and afraid of that blue flame. Humming and trembling, as if it had made up its mind, the long-clawed monkey adjusted its posture. Its stomach swelled and contracted, as if something was squirming inside. Then, something not much bigger than an adult's fist rolled out of the monkey's mouth. Xiao Xian frowned as he tore off a leaf from a nearby tree. He picked up the thing that rolled out and wiped off the mucus on the outside. Fruit? Xiao Xian was puzzled. Because the fruit had a thick layer of skin, even if it was swallowed by the long-clawed monkey, it wasn't digested. After wiping off the outer layer of dirt, a faint fragrance came out. It wasn't strong, but it was intoxicating. Although he didn't know what it was, the previous behavior of the 5 people and the long-clawed monkey's painful expression told Xiao Xian that this fruit was very special. Whether it was for humans or berserk beasts, it would certainly have great benefits. While Xiao Xian was observing the fruit, the long-clawed monkey was restless. From time to time, it quickly glanced at Xiao Xian, but it didn't dare to look directly at him. Its claws dug into the ground, but it didn't dare to directly stretch out its claws. It was afraid that Xiao Xian would really cut off its claws. Those people were looking for this. Xiao Xian held the fruit and looked at the long-clawed monkey. The long-clawed monkey nodded again and again. Xiao Xian nodded, and then under the reluctant gaze of the long-clawed monkey, he wrapped the fruit in clean leaves and put it in his animal skin bag. Seeing Xiao Xian looking at itself again, the long-clawed monkey quickly withdrew its gaze from the fruit. Its body curled up and looked at Xiao Xian eagerly, waiting for Xiao Xian to fulfill his promise. Xiao Xian didn't really want to enslave this long-clawed monkey. He didn't plan to enslave a second slave. He didn't know much about slavery. After inquiring about Ji Ju's words, he found that there were a lot of things involved. If he didn't pay attention, he might get himself into trouble. For things that he didn't know much about, Xiao Xian still treated with a cautious attitude. Picking up the stone knife, under the frightened eyes of the long-clawed monkey, Xiao Xian waved it. The long-clawed monkey, who closed its eyes in fear, felt the bindings on its body loosen. It suddenly opened its eyes, and a flash of joy appeared in its eyes. For a moment, it thought about whether or not to grab the fruit back, but it still rejected the idea. This person was different from the people it had met before. It was lucky to escape this time. If it were to court death again, it would probably become this person's food. No longer thinking about it, the long-clawed monkey suppressed the emotions in its heart. It was about to leave when it heard Xiao Xian say, "Wait a minute." The long-clawed monkey's footsteps stiffened. It turned around like a rusty robot, wondering if Xiao Xian was going back on his word. "Do you know the Yanjiao tribe?" Xiao Xian asked. The long-clawed monkey was stunned by this question, and then it raised its hand and pointed in a direction with some doubts. It made a squeak sound, as if it didn't understand why Xiao Xian said this. Instead, it asked Xiao Xian if he was pointing in the direction of the Yanjiao tribe. It had seen the Yanjiao people and could feel that Xiao Xian and the Yanjiao people's breath were similar, so it was confused after hearing Xiao Xian's words. In that direction? Xiao Xian looked, and it was consistent with the route he had decided on. Squeak! The long-clawed monkey vigorously nodded. No matter what Xiao Xian meant, it just nodded. "Okay, you can go." Xiao Xian waved his hand. This time, the long-clawed monkey didn't leave step by step. Instead, it fiercely kicked its legs, and its figure flashed and disappeared. It ran very eagerly, and secretly decided that if it saw Xiao Xian in the future, it would take a detour. After sorting out his things, Xiao Xian continued on his way. The 5 people that Xiao Xian got rid of, after meeting up with their companions, looked around the forest, but didn't see Xiao Xian's figure. Seeing that the time set by the chief was getting closer and closer, they could only go back with a belly full of unwillingness. They were the people of the Taiha tribe, which was adjacent to the Yanjiao tribe's territory. Quarrels were common. If the thing was stolen by someone else, it would be fine, but it just had to be a Yanjiao person, so they felt very sullen. When the team that went out to hunt down the long-clawed monkey returned to the Taiha tribe, they told the chief and other elders that the operation had failed, and that the thing was stolen by a Yanjiao person. As expected, whether it was the chief or the several elders, they all had a belly full of sullen anger. Previously, when a warrior of their tribe went out to hunt, he found a rare fruit that was about to ripen in the forest, but there were many fierce beasts lying in ambush around. With only 2 or 3 people, it was impossible to safely snatch it, so they immediately returned to the tribe and secretly told the chief. The fruit was a kind of fruit that could gently improve the strength of a warrior. It was very rare because there were many animals in the forest that liked the fruit. The fruit was also very good for their improvement. Moreover, the smell of the fruit was very light, and the animals in the forest had a much more sensitive sense of smell than humans. Perhaps they could detect the movement of the fruit from thousands of miles away, but humans couldn't. This was also the reason why these animals could always find the fruit before humans. The reason why the fruit was rare was that after many fruits ripened, they would be snatched by various fierce beasts before humans could find them. Historical experience and lessons taught the people of the Taiha tribe that after finding a good thing, the first thing to guard against was not the various fierce beasts lurking around the fruit, but their barbaric neighbor, the Yanjiao tribe. Therefore, in order to get the fruit back, after the chief and several elders of the Taiha tribe discussed with each other, they didn't make this matter public. Instead, they secretly sent a team to carefully avoid the sight of the Yanjiao tribe and secretly went to the place where the fruit was located. They would wait for the fruit to ripen and snatch it back. It just so happened that the Yanjiao tribe was in the middle of a hunting activity, so they didn't notice the movements of the Taiha tribe. Unfortunately, when the people of the Taiha tribe were snatching the fruit, a very fast long-clawed monkey was 1 step ahead of them and swallowed the fruit. Therefore, 2 of them went back to the tribe to inform the chief of this matter, while the others chased after the long-clawed monkey. However, the long-clawed monkey was very fast in the forest, and it was very difficult for them to track it. They chased and lost it, so they had to divide into several small teams to search for it. The large forest was far away from the tribe, and the environment was relatively unfamiliar, so it was difficult for them to find it. Finally, the 5 people heard the movement and rushed over. They found the long-clawed monkey, but unfortunately, they couldn't snatch it. Looking for the fruit, it was snatched by the long-clawed monkey. Catching the long-clawed monkey, it was snatched by the Yanjiao tribe. Snatching it from the Yanjiao tribe, they lost. Snatching it, they couldn't snatch it. Fight? They couldn't beat it. They tried to guard against it, but in the end, they still couldn't guard against the Yanjiao tribe. How could they not be angry? A gray-haired elder of the Taiha tribe felt the fire on his head, and his beard was sticking up. He pointed at the people who came back and scolded them, and finally concluded, "You can't even beat a Yanjiao tribe." The people who were being scolded lowered their heads, and thought in their hearts, "What do you mean by, can't even beat a Yanjiao tribe? Is it easy to beat a Yanjiao tribe? It's easy to say, but why don't you fight? Aren't you the same old man from Yanjiao every time?" They only dared to think about it, but didn't dare to say it out loud. Not being able to beat a Yanjiao tribe was indeed not something to be proud of. Clearly, their tribe had more people than the Yanjiao tribe, so why was it that the Taiha tribe suffered most of the time? And on the Yanjiao tribe's side, after a fierce hunting activity, the team also brought the prey back to the tribe. Along the way, they met a few old rivals of the Taiha tribe. Hearing the other party's sarcastic words, the leader of the team was baffled. He knew every word of the other party's words, but why couldn't he understand when they were connected? Were these Taiha people crazy? Chapter 371. After the hunting team leader returned to the tribe, he was called to the chief. Every time he came back from a hunt, he would have a small meeting to report the results of his hunt. He thought it would be the same this time, so after he walked into the house, he gave a simple summary of his hunt. He also mentioned the strange reactions of the Taiha tribesmen when he came back. He was then told that the Taiha tribesmen reacted that way because they were beaten up again. Why did he say, again? It couldn't be helped. The two tribes were so close to each other. Although there weren't any major conflicts, there were always small conflicts. Most of the time, the Taiha tribesmen were weaker. After a while, they got used to it. So, in the eyes of the hunting team leader, it was normal for the Taiha tribesmen to be beaten up. Was there a need to mention it? It wasn't even a need. In this kind of environment, the weak listen to the strong. If you lost, don't talk nonsense. But this time, not only were the Taiha tribesmen beaten up, they were also robbed of something good. As for what it was, they didn't know yet. They only knew that the Taiha tribesmen spent a lot of effort to get it, but it was still robbed by the Yanjiao tribesmen. The Yanjiao tribesmen knew that if something was already in the hands of the other party, the Yanjiao tribesmen wouldn't do anything. But if the other party didn't get it, the Yanjiao tribesmen would dare to rob it. Whoever had the ability would get it. And this was because the Yanjiao tribesmen didn't do anything to the Taiha tribesmen. If this happened to other tribes, a bloody battle would be inevitable. So, when the hunting team leader heard that his tribesmen robbed the other party's goods again, he was very happy. The hunt went smoothly, and his good mood went up another level. He lay on the chair, crossed his legs, and looked at the young men standing next to him. His eyes were kind and loving. These were all excellent warriors of the Yanjiao tribe. Although they were young, they were all very talented. He heard that the one who robbed them was a young man. And he beat up Fei Yong and the others from the Taiha tribe? Fei Yong of the Taiha tribe was a high-level warrior. If he could rob and beat up their people, his strength should be. The head of the hunting group glanced at the few of them, then reached his hand into the animal skin bag and took out a palm-sized jade stone. The color of the jade was dense and slightly transparent. Even from a distance, one could feel a sense of calmness and gentleness. Taking out the jade, the leader of the hunting group said in a gratified tone, "Who is the one who hit and robbed the goods? Come out and let me praise you. I'm so happy today. I'll give him a piece of jade that I got by chance during this hunt." Normally, the leader would not be willing to take out the gem as a reward, but he was in a good mood today, so he took it out to liven things up. However, after he finished speaking and waited, no one stepped forward. What? No one wants to receive the reward? The leader asked in surprise. Still, no one made a sound. Crow slash. Tao Zheng. What? Everyone he looked at and asked shook their heads in denial. The three young men were still puzzled. They didn't participate in the hunt, but they were called here for questioning. But they didn't do it, so what if there was a reward? They couldn't lie to the chief and the leaders, could they? The smile on the leader's face slowly disappeared. He seemed to have realized something. He looked at the few people beside him and the chief sitting at the head of the table. He straightened his body. What's going on? Only then did he realize that the atmosphere in the room was a little strange. When he was called here, he was too excited to notice. Now that he had calmed down, he realized that everyone was serious. Including the chief and the shaman, they were all silent. Looking at their expressions, they seemed to be thinking about something important. Guang Yi, tell us, what's going on? The leader looked at the people beside him. A middle-aged man sitting next to him sighed and said, although we were very happy when we heard about this, after asking, we found that no one admitted it. You mean, that means, this might not have been done by our people? Guang Yi sighed. How is that possible? How could this not have been done by our people? The leader was confused. The others glanced at him, thinking, what does he mean by, how could it not have been done by our people? Is this all the Yanjiao people can do? But, this really needed to be investigated. Could it be that someone is pretending to be a Yanjiao person? Or are the people of Taihe lying and blaming us for this? Asked the leader of the hunting team. The chief sitting at the head of the table shook his head. From what I know, the possibility of them lying to us is not high. No matter what, we must take this seriously. An old woman with a head full of silver hair and many accessories sitting beside the chief said in a low voice. Don't tell anyone else about this for now. We'll talk about it after the investigation. The chief said. Seeing that the chief and shaman had spoken, the others nodded, yes. The meeting was adjourned. The leader saw Guang Yi leave and called out, Hey, Guang Yi, where are you going? I still have something to ask you. Go ask someone else. Guang Yi walked in front without looking back. He waved his hand impatiently and continued walking. Seeing this, the leader could only ask someone else to find out more about this incident. This was really strange. On the other side, after Guang Yi left the chief, he walked with his head down, wondering who was behind this. Was it a Yanjiao person? Or was it the Flaming Horn bloodline that had been left behind? The possibility was not high. Unknowingly, Guang Yi had left the residential area of the tribe and walked to the border. It was quiet here, suitable for thinking. When the Yanjiao guards saw Guang Yi, they greeted him and left. With Guang Yi here, they did not need to patrol this area. Plus, Guang Yi seemed eager for them to leave. Guang Yi only gave a casual to the guards and did not look at them. It was the same whether he looked at them or not. Guang Yi continued walking until he reached the river at the border. They had dug this river themselves. Although it was not big, it kept some beasts away. It was the tribe's first line of defense. Since he was here, Guang Yi did not plan to leave immediately. He sat down and stared at the sparkling river under the setting sun until he heard footsteps. Guang Yi was very strong. Even the leader of the hunting team might not be as good as him. His hearing was even better. When he heard the footsteps, he became alert. He stopped thinking and stared at the forest on the other side of the river. Rustle, 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 someone was walking around. Who would be walking around at this time of the year? Guang Yi was confused. The hunters had returned. The patrols would not be on the other side of the river at this time of the year. Then, who was it? Rustle, 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 the footsteps grew louder. Xiao Xian stepped on the wet grass. Although he thought he was mentally strong, he could not help but feel nervous. The closer he got to Yanjiao, the harder it was for him to calm down. Were the other half of the Yanjiao people the same as the Yanjiao he knew? Was his temperament as he had imagined? Would there be other drastic changes? What kind of attitude would they have towards him? After all, the two branches of the tribe had been separated for 1,000 years. As he thought, he walked out of the forest. Xiao Xian saw the person on the other side of the river. It was a middle-aged man wearing clothes made of cloth and animal skin. He had a short beard and a muscular body. His skin that was exposed outside his clothes was dark. His back was straight and he stood steadily. However, he gave off the feeling that he would attack at any moment. The man's eyes narrowed. He looked sternly and oppressively at Xiao Xian on the other side of the river. When he saw the man, Xiao Xian's first thought was, "I found you." As for Guang Yi, he frowned when he saw the young man. He scolded him sternly, "What are you doing outside at this time of the year?" Xiao Xian. He had thought of all possible reactions when he saw a tribesman. The only reaction he did not expect was this. Seeing the confusion in Xiao Xian's eyes, Guang Yi said sternly, "What are you waiting for? Come here." Guang Yi walked back a little and kicked a tree as thick as two people into the river. Looking at the tree floating in the river and the uncle's scolding gaze, Xiao Xian thought, "Forget it, I'll go over first." He jumped up and landed on the tree. Using the buoyancy of the tree as support, Xiao Xian jumped up again and landed on the riverbank. Looking back, Xiao Xian saw the uncle dragging a piece of wood floating on the river to the shore. There was a straw rope tied to one end of the tree. After crossing the river with the help of the tree would be pulled back and placed on the bank. It would be used the next time someone crossed the river. Tossing the tree aside, Guang Yi saw Xiao Xian still standing there and was displeased. "What are you standing there for? Go back. What time is it now? Why are you still strolling outside?" Xiao Xian scratched his head. What did he mean? Was he acting friendly? Didn't seem like it. Looking at the man walking forward with his hands behind his back, Xiao Xian wanted to ask, "Uncle, did you get the wrong person? Hurry up and follow. Don't even think about sneaking out at this time." Guang Yi's face was scolding, his gaze so stern it was like he wanted to nail someone to the ground. Guang Yi's actions were like an elder who caught a junior sneaking out to play and was scolding him. Xiao Xian was even more confused. However, he had achieved his goal of entering the Yinjiao tribe. "Let's go then." Thinking about it, Xiao Xian quickly caught up with the people in front of him and walked into the place he had been searching for. If there were other Yinjiao people here, they would not be like this. However, at this time, the other patrols had been chased away by Guang Yi. As for Guang Yi, if he was not a member of the tribe, he would not know this person's characteristics. Everyone in the Flaming Horn tribe knew that Guang Yi was as powerful as the current leader of the hunting team. However, even though he was much more powerful than the leader, there was only one reason why he couldn't become the leader of the hunting team. This master had face blindness. Chapter 372. Guang Yi had encountered a problem he didn't know how to solve. He couldn't think of a solution, so he wasn't in a good mood today. He didn't expect to meet a young man wandering around so late at night. Guang Yi couldn't remember people. The number of people in the tribe he could remember could be counted on two hands, and they were all old friends he had known for decades. If it was anyone else, Guang Yi wouldn't be able to recognize them. But with Guang Yi's special status and power in the tribe, this shortcoming was nothing. He himself was not interested in being the leader of the hunting team, because he thought it was too troublesome to recognize people. He wanted to remember the hundreds and thousands of people in the hunting team every time they went out. To him, this was a huge problem. Usually when people greeted him, he would respond, but he couldn't remember their faces. However, he could still tell if they were from the tribe. If they were from another tribe, Guang Yi would be able to recognize them immediately even if they weren't in disguise. This was a common aura that belonged to all tribesmen, just like how the long-clawed monkey could tell that Xiao Xian was a Yinjiao from his aura and presence. Even though Xiao Xian wasn't using his totemic power, there was a subtle connection between Yinjiao people. Anyone with a bit of sensitivity would be able to tell. Guang Yi couldn't recognize people, but he was sure they were from the tribe. When he first saw Xiao Xian, he thought this kid was disobedient. He should be scolded for wandering around outside when it was time to return to the tribe. If he still didn't repent, he would have to do it himself. You young people, seriously. Don't always think you're so strong. Do you know how many fearsome beasts there are in the forest? Do you know how many fearsome beasts even I am afraid of? Not just fearsome beasts, but other dangers as well. Can you handle them? Why is the tribe out hunting this time instead of hunting? Because it was impossible for one person to hunt alone. Do you think you're stronger than Duokong? Let's take a step back. Do you think you're stronger than Wuzhan, Taozheng and Zhui? As he spoke, Guang Yi turned to look at Xiao Xian to see if he had any impatience, disapproval or any other expression. Xiao Xian's expression changed to one of respect when the man turned his head. He didn't know who Duokong was, nor did he know who Wuzhan, Taozheng and Zhui were. But based on his experience, under these circumstances, the best choice was to listen obediently. However, the names that the man had just mentioned were definitely famous people in the tribe. Xiao Xian memorized them. Seeing Xiao Xian's attitude, Guang Yi's dissatisfaction, but he didn't finish scolding. You peoples is arrogant. Arrogant. Disobedient. Do you think you're? If you meet an adult mountain lion, cave bear or other large fearsome beasts, how many lives do you have? Even the smaller ones can easily keep you in the forest forever. For example, the long-clawed machete monkey that made Taiha suffer. One of them can easily kill you. Xiao Xian was originally obediently listening to the lecture, but when he suddenly heard the name long-clawed knife monkey, he thought of the one he had caught before. He opened his mouth and was about to say something when he saw the person in front of him staring at him. That expression seemed to say, "You still want to quibble?" After some thought, Xiao Xian remained silent and listened attentively. Guang Yi was satisfied and continued scolding Xiao Xian for not following the rules and acting on his own. Xiao Xian followed behind Guang Yi and walked in. The Yanjiao tribe's second line of defense was a wall made of large wooden stakes and rocks. There were people guarding the entrance. Seeing Guang Yi bring a stranger in, they were curious, but since Guang Yi didn't say anything, they didn't dare to ask. When Guang Yi brought Xiao Xian in and out of earshot, the guards began to discuss. Who was the person Guang Yi brought in? Someone asked. I don't know, but with Guang Yi here, we don't have to worry. Although Guang Yi was face-blind, he had never brought an enemy into the tribe before, so they weren't worried. While listening, Xiao Xian paid attention to the surrounding scenery and layout. He didn't expect to enter the tribe so easily and in such a way. It was really unexpected. The layout here wasn't too different from what Xiao Xian knew about the Yanjiao tribe. The central living area was on a mountain, but it was just a small mountain. There were a small number of plantation fields around, but only a small number. There were also animals in captivity around, but they were all small animals that looked docile. It seemed that the people of the Flaming Horns tribe mainly hunted. However, from the bronze weapons in their hands and the cloth clothes they wore, they must have been trading with the outside world. Seeing that they were doing well, Xiao Xian was relieved. At this time, the sun was about to set. Many people were eating dinner at home, not many were walking around outside. These people were also curious when they saw Xiao Xian's unfamiliar face. However, when they saw Guang Yi, they swallowed their curiosity and wondered if he was from a family up in the mountains. There were so many people in the tribe, they couldn't remember all of them clearly. They were only familiar with those who lived in this area. After scolding, Guang Yi remembered to ask for Xiao Xian's name. What's your name again? Xiao Xian's heart tightened and he said seriously, I'm Xiao Xian. He waited for Guang Yi's reaction. Guang Yi stopped in his tracks and tilted his head slightly as if he was recalling something. Then he said with a look of realization, Oh, it's you. Xiao Xian. Who are you thinking of now? You've got the wrong person, you know. Actually Xiao Xian was interrupted before he could finish. Alright, go back. Don't think about running away again. I'm watching. Guang Yi said impatiently. He looked at Xiao Xian as if to say, "Stop talking nonsense. You're such a busybody." Xiao Xian didn't know what expression to use. He felt like the misunderstanding was getting worse. However, a misunderstanding was a misunderstanding. Xiao Xian wanted to see what would happen if this misunderstanding continued. Xiao Xian didn't know who this person thought he was, but he heard people calling him Guang Yi on the way here. Judging by their attitude, this person must have a high position in the tribe. Guang Yi brought Xiao Xian to a wooden house. Although he couldn't remember faces, he remembered clearly whose house it was. "Go in. Don't think about running away," Guang Yi gestured with his chin. The door to the house was open. Xiao Xian walked to the door and scratched his head, wondering if he should greet the owner. Creak, a window opened on the other side of the house. The person inside saw Guang Yi but couldn't see Xiao Xian because of the angle. Guang Yi also saw the person by the window. He pointed at him and recalled something. I'm Zhao Ming. "Uncle Guang Yi, why are you here?" the person inside asked excitedly. Everyone knew Guang Yi and many young warriors admired him. The person inside wanted to jump out of the window but remembered that he was covered in mud. He would definitely be scolded if he went out, so he held himself back. "Oh, right, Zhao Ming. So, Zhao Ming, I brought your brother here. Keep an eye on him, don't let him run around." Guang Yi walked up the mountain after saying that. Zhao Ming was confused by Guang Yi's words. His brother had just finished participating in the group hunt. His results were not bad and he even made a small contribution. He should be celebrating with a few friends tonight. Why was he running around again? Zhao Ming put down the things in his hands and left the small room. He wanted to ask his brother, who was brought back by Guang Yi. "Brother, didn't you go to celebrate?" However, when Zhao Ming walked out of the room and saw a stranger at the door, his words were stuck in his throat. "Who are you?" Zhao Ming asked cautiously, his hands reaching behind his back. "Me? Of course I'm Yanjiao." Chapter 373. What kind of answer was that? Zhao Ming was still looking at Xiao Xian cautiously. It was undeniable that he relaxed a little after knowing he was from his own tribe. However, he did not believe him completely. He might not be outstanding in other aspects, but his memory was very good. Just like the other children in the tribe who had not awakened, he liked to stare at the people who went out to hunt every time the tribe went out to hunt. Then he would talk with the other children about the famous people on the mountain and at the foot of the mountain. Even if they were not famous, he could still remember their names. However, Zhao Ming had no recollection of the person in front of him. Although he believed that Guang Yi would not bring in anyone who was a threat to the tribe, Zhao Ming trusted his own memory even more. "I've never seen you before." Zhao Ming's hand was still behind his back. There was a dagger in a leather sheath on his belt. Xiao Xian did not mind. He noticed that there was only one child in the house. He was not in a hurry to clarify and decided to play with the child. The children here were more alert than the children in the other Yanjiao tribe. Perhaps it was because the environment was more complicated. After all, the Yanjiao people had lived in isolation for almost 1,000 years. Their thinking was much simpler. Pulling a wooden stool over, Xiao Xian sat down and looked around the house. This was the area at the foot of the mountain. This should be a normal family in the tribe. Looking at the daily necessities, there should not be many people living here. Perhaps there were only 2 brothers. Although the things in the house were simple, compared to the Yanjiao tribe Xiao Xian had lived in, the people here had come into contact with many different things. There were cloth bags hanging on the wall and some composite or metal tools. There were fewer pure stone tools. There were pottery bowls and pots on the table. There was also a large pottery water tank in the corner of the floor. It was all made of painted pottery. Seeing Xiao Xian looking around, Zhao Ming took half a step forward and took a deep breath as if to encourage himself. His voice grew louder. "Who are you?" "I'm Xiao Xian." "Xiao Xian? Never heard of you. Are you really from Yanjiao?" Zhao Ming hadn't awakened yet, so his abilities were limited. His senses were not as strong as Guang Yi and the others, so he couldn't tell if Xiao Xian was Yanjiao or not without his totemic power. He couldn't even tell if Xiao Xian was Yanjiao. The answer to the illumination was the totem patterns that appeared on Xiao Xian's face. Because he was wearing cloth clothes and animal skins, the totem patterns on his arms and other parts of his body were not obvious. It was already late and the light was not good. The illumination could only illuminate the patterns on Xiao Xian's face. The totem pattern was a very powerful proof. It was more useful than 1,000 words. Seeing the totem patterns on Xiao Xian's face, Zhao Ming finally let out a long sigh of relief. His speech was also much easier. Where do you live? I've never seen you before. Also, why did Guang Yi bring you to my house? Zhao Ming pulled over a square stool and sat down. He asked Xiao Xian. I was wandering outside when Guang Yi caught me. He asked me who I was and I told him I was Xiao Xian. Then he brought me here. Xiao Xian shrugged helplessly. Does your brother look like me? Zhao Ming shook his head. No, not at all. But Uncle Guang Yi can't recognize people and he gets names wrong. My brother's name is Zhao Quan, not Xiao Xian. So he was face blind. Xiao Xian understood. He had guessed this before, but he never met someone like this. He didn't expect the first Yanjiao he met here to be face blind. He even got names wrong. Aren't you going back? Zhao Ming asked. I can't. I'm going to stay at your house for the night. Xiao Xian said. Zhao Ming didn't understand why Xiao Xian said, you can't go back. He wanted to ask more but his stomach growled. Everything had to wait until he was full. Zhao Ming put his questions aside for now. They were all tribesmen and there were no grudges between them. It was fine to stay for the night. Just like how his brother was sleeping at a friend's house. You can stay. My brother isn't coming back tonight, so you can sleep at his place. Oh right, have you eaten? No, I didn't get to eat before Guang Yi brought me back. He even scolded me the whole way. Xiao Xian said. Zhao Ming gave Guang Yi a sympathetic look. Guang Yi was famous for teaching people a lesson, and he always had a serious look on his face. Many people in the tribe respected him, even the young warriors in the tribe. Then I'll share some with you. Zhao Ming brought over a clay pot. There was some cooked meat soup inside. It was still warm. His brother had asked someone to bring a pot of meat soup back so he wouldn't starve. If he couldn't finish it tonight, he could eat more tomorrow. It wouldn't spoil after one night. However, it wasn't enough with Xiao Xian. Xiao Xian was a totemic warrior and ate a lot. Should I cook some more? Zhao Ming put down the pot and wanted to get some food but was stopped by Xiao Xian. I brought some food. Let me borrow your pot and water. Xiao Xian waved a pouch made of animal skin. When they were in the forest, most of the time, they would just roast the meat and eat it. There were a few times when the meat was still raw. However, they had no choice. It was too dangerous in the forest and they had to be on guard at all times. It wasn't easy to find a cave and it wasn't easy to enjoy a cooked meal. The meat they brought was not fully cooked either. When it was good, there would only be a little bit of blood. When it was bad, there would be blood. Cooking soup was out of the question. Since they were here, Xiao Xian planned to drink some meat soup. What kind of meat are you cooking? Zhao Ming sniffed and asked. I don't know what it's called. It looks weird. Want some? No, we can't eat what you totemic warriors eat. Although he was greedy, he knew his limits. You can have some soup. Xiao Xian scooped half a spoonful of soup and poured it into Zhao Ming's bowl. The meat soup he cooked wasn't that strong. Children could drink it after diluting it. Xiao Xian had seen it in the tribe before. Moreover, Xiao Xian noticed that the children here were stronger. Hey, my brother is always like this too. Zhao Ming grinned from ear to ear. His impression of Xiao Xian was even better now. He wasn't sure if it was an illusion, but Zhao Ming felt that this soup was better than the ones he drank before. After drinking it, there was a clear flow of warmth in his body. After a whole afternoon of making pottery, his tired body felt much better. After eating and drinking, the sky outside was dark and the two moons dimmed. After putting out the firewood, everyone went to sleep. For the first time in half a year, Xiao Xian could sleep peacefully. He didn't have to worry about the desert beasts, the slave masters, or the hidden threats in the forest. He was surrounded by Yanjiao people. Although there was no fire seed, Xiao Xian felt like it was right beside him. His heart was peaceful. He slept all the way to the next day without any dreams. Xiao Xian woke up early in the morning. Hearing the voices and movements of the people outside, he was a little dazed. After a while, he remembered that he was in the Yanjiao tribe. It wasn't the one he was familiar with, but the one he had been looking for. Opening the window in his room, Xiao Xian smelled the fresh morning air and looked outside. The mountain wasn't high, but it covered a large area. Every house was 10 meters apart, and some were even further apart. Anyway, it was a big place. Zhao Ming was woken up by the smell of food. He yawned as he walked out. The meat soup was ready. Xiao Xian finished his portion and Zhao Ming cooked his as well. He even added some fearsome beast meat to the soup. "Where do you plan to go later?" asked Xiao Xian. "To get the pots," said Zhao Ming. "He made a few big pots yesterday. There were people in charge of making them in the tribe. He just needed to get them today. I'll go with you." "Okay." Zhao Ming forgot about the questions he wanted to ask yesterday. He was busy drinking the soup. After licking the last bit of meat off and putting away the things, Zhao Ming brought Xiao Xian to the place where the pots were. No one was allowed to enter the place where the pots were made, especially curious children. It was easy to get into trouble. So after the pots were made, the person in charge would place the pots on the ground outside for each family to take their things. Seeing Xiao Xian's unfamiliar face, many people were curious. They asked Zhao Ming a few questions, but when they heard that Guang Yi brought him here, they stopped asking. Zhao Ming made 2 big pots and 5 pots yesterday. When he found his things, he found a broken piece of pottery on the ground. There were words written on it. 2 out of 5 pots failed. Thank goodness the pots didn't break. Not every pottery would be successfully fired. There might be some mistakes in the pottery making process, which would affect the result of the firing. Zhao Ming was not satisfied with the result. Xiao Xian's eyes swept across the potteries of various sizes on the floor. They were categorized according to the families. Those that were used for illumination were placed together. If they failed, the person who made them would write on the broken pieces. There was no need to worry about taking them by mistake. Every pot had pictures or words written on it. Some had their own names, while others had other symbols. For example, Zhao Ming's pot had the word Zhao written on it. No matter whose pot it was, the pictures and words all had one thing in common: totems. The bottom of the pot or other parts of the pot would have a 2-horned flame totem and the word Yanjiao written on it. The words on the pots were not the ones used by the slave masters. They were the ones Xiao Xian had been exposed to since he was young. It seemed like the people of the Flaming Horn tribe had never forgotten this language, nor had they put it down. Zhao Ming wanted to take them a few times, but with Xiao Xian's help, he could do it in one go. He put the small pots into the pot. Xiao Xian carried one on each shoulder. Ah, there was a roar. Xiao Xian looked in the direction of the sound. Hearing the roar, Zhao Ming's eyes lit up. He said to Xiao Xian, "Let's go take a look." The hunting team brought back a lot of giant beasts. "My brother's giant beast is over there." The spoils of their hunt were also divided according to the number of people. Who got the prey was up to them. Therefore, according to the rules, the giant beast over there also had a share of Ming Ming's family. When the time came to slaughter it, they would be able to get a lot of meat. Children who had never participated in a hunt were always curious about the giant beasts. Zhao Ming was no longer in a hurry to go home. He pulled Xiao Xian over to show off. After all, this was his brother's work. It's a dinosaur. Zhao Ming was very excited. It was rare to get such a giant beast. Xiao Xian looked over. A giant beast was tied up by thick vines. It was lying on the ground. There was a circle of thick wooden stakes around it. However, these wooden stakes were mainly used to stop people. It was very difficult to use them to trap a giant beast in the forest. This was also why the giant beast was still tied up. The children around them climbed onto the wooden stakes and looked at the giant beast. They excitedly discussed how much meat they would get and which part of it they would get. Based on the shape of the dinosaur's head, it looked like a ferocious crocodile or lizard. Especially when the dinosaur deliberately stretched its skin, the cracks on its face made it look like a savage predator with a cold gaze. However, it was different below the head. There were no thick scales. There was only a thin layer of fur. The dinosaur's head was big and looked heavy. When it came to competition, it would use its head to fight. Its tail was short and heavy. When it stood, it could maintain its heavy body's balance. When the dinosaur roared, the teeth in its mouth showed that it was a herbivorous giant beast. Two young warriors were telling the curious children about the temperament and habits of this giant beast. Zhao Ming gestured to Xiao Xian to place the vat on the ground and climb onto the wooden stakes to have a good look. They could only see through the gaps in the stakes. It was too much of an eyesore. Xiao Xian thought about it. Anyway, there was no need to worry about the vat being taken. After Zhao Ming climbed up, he ran to the side and listened to the two warriors' description of the hunt with the other children. Xiao Xian looked at the giant beast that had changed its position on the ground. This giant beast was 4 to 5 meters tall even when it was lying down. There was enough meat for everyone to share. As he thought about it, Xiao Xian noticed that there was something wrong with the vines around the giant beast. He was a frequent user of vines. Naturally, he could tell that one of the loops where the vines were tied was broken. It was slightly loose. "Hey, you two over there. The dinosaur is about to bite off the vines," Xiao Xian shouted. The two young warriors who were talking excitedly were displeased with the sudden interruption. But when they heard Xiao Xian's voice, they quickly looked over and noticed the anomaly. "Get down!" One of them waved at the children on the stakes and blew the wooden whistle. They were used to situations like this, so they did not panic. They knew that if what the man said was true, the two of them would not be able to handle it. The dinosaur knew that it had been discovered. It opened its mouth wide and bit down on the vines. Its body suddenly stretched and its powerful jaws moved. Bang! Xiao Xian heard a cracking sound, followed by a high-pitched roar of a beast. Zhao Ming and the other children quickly slid down the stakes and left without looking back. This was the battlefield of the warriors. They would only be a hindrance if they stayed. Zhao Ming ran a few steps and realized that he had forgotten something. He turned around and did not see Xiao Xian. Instead, he saw two large vats beside the stakes. Just as he was thinking about whether he should go back and look for it, Zhao Ming suddenly heard a thunderous boom. The ground shook because of it. The roar was gone. Everything seemed to have returned to normal. Zhao Ming did not hear any movement from the warriors guarding the vines. He swallowed his saliva and bravely moved forward. Through the gaps between the stakes, he saw the giant dinosaur kneeling on the ground. Its head was already smashed into the ground. Its hind legs were kicking as if it was trying to pull its head out. But it seemed to be powerless. Chapter 374. At this time, the people who heard the whistle also rushed over. Their reaction was fast enough. Because this kind of thing happened often, they didn't dawdle. When they heard the whistle, a large area was cleared out. The people who were originally here had already run away, including the children who were watching the show. They had already run to a safe place. But this time, it ended too quickly. Before anyone could react, it was already over. Looking at the dino head that was smashed into the ground, then at the person standing in front of it, the people who rushed into the circle looked at each other in confusion. Fuck, who the fuck is this? Finally, the most authoritative person among them was pushed out. He carefully took a few steps towards Xiao Xian and said, "You." When they saw Xiao Xian turn around, they were sure they did not recognize this unfamiliar face. However, one of the guards who was guarding the gates of the tribe yesterday came over. When he saw Xiao Xian, he said, "Hey, aren't you the one Guang Yi brought in yesterday?" At this moment, two figures appeared on the wooden stake. "What's going on?" asked one of them. When the crowd saw the two people on the wooden stakes, their expressions changed and their tone became more cautious. One of them briefly explained what had just happened. Tao Zheng was still upset. Yesterday, he was dragged to the chief's place and scolded. Today, he came out to hunt for food but bumped into Zhui on the way. His mood worsened. Everyone knew that Zhui was a crazy person. If they went out with him, they would not be able to hunt properly. Unexpectedly, before they even left the tribe, they heard the commotion. After getting a general idea of what happened, Tao Zheng did not pay too much attention to it. After all, this kind of thing happened all the time and the tribe's security measures were good. He looked at the dino head that was smashed into the ground, then at the stranger standing there. Tao Zheng's first reaction was, I've never seen this person before. Is he from our tribe? Not bad. His second reaction was, oh no. As expected, before Tao Zheng could say anything, Zhui, who was standing next to him, was already gone. Everyone in the tribe knew that you was a fighter. Every time there was an outstanding warrior in the tribe, you would go over and interact with that warrior. But now, you was excited to meet someone who could beat the dino head to the ground in one move. With the sudden rise of the totem power in his body, Yu's momentum increased sharply. The pressure of a senior totem warrior rushed to Xiao Xian's position in the field, and even the people standing not far away could feel it. The top part of the wooden stake that you had been standing on had been shattered. You rushed towards Xiao Xian at an extremely fast speed. His movements were swift and ferocious, as if he had encountered an excellent prey in the forest. He was extremely serious, as if everything around him had faded away, leaving only himself and his prey. The reason why so few people were willing to cooperate with Hui in hunting was that they couldn't get used to Huey's style, which was fine just a moment ago and then suddenly exploded in the next moment. The other reason was that Huey's rhythm was too fast for most people to keep up. But now, before the person who came to solve the dino head problem could finish his sentence, you had already attacked. The faces of the other warriors present twitched. There was no need to say anything more. It was useless to say anything now. They couldn't stop you anyway. Although they didn't know who the other party was or where they came from, everyone in the Yanjiao tribe knew that it would be difficult to stop you, who was as excited as if he had drunk the blood of a king beast. Unless the chief and the other leaders personally stopped him, they could only wait until he was satisfied. Something bad was going to happen. This was what everyone thought at the same time. They wondered whose house would be unlucky enough to be affected this time. That person was so pitiful. He only managed to defeat one dino head, and now he was targeted by you. Everyone thought. In the face of Huey's sudden attack, Xiao Xian didn't dodge. Instead, the moment Hui moved, an aura that wasn't any weaker than Huey's exploded. The totemic patterns he showed Zhao Ming last night were slightly dark, but now, because his totemic power was at its peak, the totemic patterns on his body were like lava. The air around him roared continuously. In the face of the incoming fist, Xiao Xian's arm slashed out like a hunting knife. Advanced? Tao Zheng, who was standing on the wooden stake, narrowed his eyes. An unfamiliar face with a Yanjiao totemic pattern and an advanced totemic warrior. How could there be someone like this in the tribe? He suddenly remembered why he was dragged to the chief's place. Looking at the people in the field, could it be, bang? The fist collided with the palm. A dull sound pierced everyone's eardrums, making their hearts tremble. Xiao Xian didn't dodge and continued to face the fist head-on. Force with force. Tao Zheng's eyes flashed. When the Yanjiao people were fighting outsiders or hunting, they might use a lot of other techniques. But when it came to internal competition, they liked to fight force with force. Strength, speed, momentum, no matter what, they would always fight force with force. But there weren't many people in the tribe who dared to fight force with you. Tao Zheng was familiar with all of them, but not this one. Xiao Xian's muscles tensed up. The strength and momentum of his totemic power at its peak burst out. He didn't dodge nimbly, nor did he wait for an opportunity to strike. He didn't use any other tools. He relied solely on himself. To Xiao Xian, this wasn't a hunt. It was the first time he had interacted with another Yanjiao tribe. He couldn't suppress the excitement in his heart. He wanted to know how the Yanjiao people here had developed. Without the fire seed, how were they doing now? Everything, in this head-on battle, was like a golden knife that cut through the fog that had been shrouding them for years. Even the totemic flames in his mind seemed to be as excited as Xiao Xian. 1,000 years, in the eyes of others, these two people were like two hard rocks colliding. It was hard to say who would win or lose. Bang 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 bang. Many people couldn't even see the two people's figures clearly. They could only see that there were more and more holes. Some looked like they were made by fists and were slightly round. Others were made by feet and were slightly flat. No matter which one it was, someone had to fill in the holes after the battle. It wasn't a small project. They felt the shaking of the ground and the splashing of dust and stones. It was like a giant beast was wantonly trampling on the ground. Every time it rang out, everyone's hearts would tremble violently. Especially Zhao Ming, who was looking through the gaps between the wooden pillars. He was completely stunned. He didn't know that the person who stayed in his house last night was actually someone as powerful as you. Who was Xiao Xian? Why hadn't he heard of him in the tribe? Was he secretly groomed by the chief? Even the dinosaur that was knocked into the ground didn't dare to move. It had pulled its head out, but when it saw Xiao Xian and you clashing, it buried its head back into the hole. It was as if it was deceiving itself. Stop! An angry roar came from afar like a thunderclap. Bang! The two people separated from each other. Xiao Xian stumbled back 2 steps. On the other side, Zhui slid back a few steps before stopping. If someone was close enough, they could smell the smell of burnt vegetation. If they looked closely, they could see Zhui's sturdy vines-woven straw shoes. They were smoking. Xiao Xian looked at his clothes. When he hunted in the forest, he usually hid or ambushed. It was rare for him to encounter such a direct confrontation. His aura was not concealed at all, the vibrations were hard to control. When they clashed, it was like 2 sharp blades clashing against each other. Hence, Xiao Xian's cotton shirt and pants were torn in many places by the sudden turbulence. Fortunately, they weren't completely destroyed or Xiao Xian would have to run naked in front of everyone. Why did he say accompany? Because his opponent wasn't any better than Xiao Xian. In fact, Yu's clothes were torn in more places. He looked at the person who appeared out of nowhere. He looked about the same age as Guang Yi. Did they call him team leader? This person was the leader of the hunting team. Just as Xiao Xian was observing Yu and the person who appeared, the others were also observing Xiao Xian. They couldn't see anything clearly. All they saw was that Yu slid back so far while Xiao Xian only took 2 steps back. That was all. In a head-on clash, Qi actually lost. This fact shocked everyone. Duo Kong, who had just appeared, did not know the whole story. He only heard that Yu and Tao Zheng were preparing to go hunting. When he went down the mountain, he heard the commotion. Someone said that Yu was fighting with someone again. That was why he came over angrily. When he thought of this, Duo Kong was furious. He had just scolded them yesterday and now they were causing trouble again. Yu's opponent this time was Tao Zheng. Even if it wasn't Tao Zheng, it was still someone he was familiar with. Hence, when Duo Kong entered the circle, the first person he pointed at was Yu, who was shaking his hands in pain. "You've already forgotten what you said yesterday? What did you promise to the leader yesterday?" "Anne." Duo Kong spat his saliva all over Joy's face. After scolding Yu, Duo Kang's face was gloomy. He wanted to scold the other one, and Yu. But when he turned around, he was stuck. After the word Yu, Duo Kong didn't say anything. Instead, he stared at Xiao Xian as if someone was choking him. His face was red, but he couldn't say anything. The others didn't understand why he was choking like this. Duo Kang's face was a little twisted. They didn't know if it was because of anger or something else. Instead of looking at Xiao Xian, Duo Kong was staring at the necklace on Xiao Xian's neck. Previously, this necklace was always worn by Xiao Xian. It was usually hidden by his clothes so no one could see it. But when he fought with you just now, his clothes were torn. There were a few pieces of cloth fluttering in the wind from his neck to his chest. The fiery red ball in the bone ornament appeared in Duo Kang's sight just like that. Without any mental preparation, without any warning, the thing that he had always thought only existed in the stories of his ancestors had suddenly appeared. Was it fake? Or was it just similar? Or, could it be real? At this time, trouble, and all kinds of nonsense were all thrown to the back of Duo Kang's mind. Ignoring the others, Duo Kang stared at Xiao Xian. His hand reached for the horn at his waist. Since he took over as the leader of the hunting team, this was the first time he blew this horn. Chapter 375. The horn that Duo Kong carried with him was a gift from a small tribesman who lived in the forest when the tribe first arrived here a few hundred years ago. The tribesmen were skilled in crafting, and they were good at making things out of beast horns and bones, including horns. In this field, even the slave masters might not be able to compete with them. The one who received the gift was the leader of the hunting team in the Yanjiao tribe. Because the horn's sound was very strange, it sounded like the roar of a very powerful predator in the forest, so it was not used often. Someone once said that this kind of horn sound could scare away many beasts in the forest. Although the horn was not big, it was made of excellent quality. Hundreds of years had passed, except for some scratches, there was no other damage on it. That was because there were other wooden or leather whistles that worked during hunting. Later on, this horn was specially used to signal an emergency, especially when it was a big event related to the tribe. The horn was passed down from one hunting team leader to another. Since Duo Kong took over as the leader of the hunting team, the tribe was relatively peaceful. Even if there were some small problems, they would be solved by the warriors in time. There were no big problems that affected the tribe, so the horn was not used. But now, he took out this horn. Woo! The palm-sized black horn suddenly made a sound like the roar of a beast in the forest, and the sound broke the peaceful atmosphere of the tribe. After the group hunting, many people were busy dealing with the prey they had hunted. When they heard the sound of the horn, most of them didn't realize what was going on. Only some of the older ones, who had experienced the previous hunting team leader blowing the horn, reacted when they heard the sound of the horn. They had not heard it for many years, and now that they heard it for the first time, they felt a sense of disbelief. They wondered if their ears were playing tricks on them. But when they saw the serious faces of the others, and some were so scared that their faces turned pale, they knew that it was not their imagination. It was indeed the special horn that belonged to the hunting team leader. It sounded again. In the past, when this kind of horn sound appeared, it usually meant a fight or a massacre. The young warriors and children were a little confused, but the elders did not hesitate to stop what they were doing. They asked everyone to put aside what they were doing for the time being. There might be a huge crisis in the tribe. Only this kind of big thing that concerned the whole tribe would make the team leader blow the horn. As for other reasons, they could not think of. The people on the mountain had similar reactions, especially the chief, the shaman, and a few prestigious people in the tribe. At this moment, their faces all changed. What's going on? Did Duo Kong blow the horn? The leader ran out of the house and asked. I don't know. It came from the foot of the mountain. Let's go. Some people dropped their bowls and ran over after eating 2 mouthfuls of food. Some people rushed over in the middle of going to the toilet. The shamaness, who had just discussed with the leader, was not a combatant. She was old and it was not good for her to run around, so she stayed on the mountain. One figure after another ran down the mountain. The other residents of the tribe, the elderly and the children who were not strong enough to fight, all ran into the house to hide. Even the naughtiest child ran into the house obediently, while the warriors picked up the weapons in their hands. In just 2 or 3 breaths, the atmosphere of the tribe changed. They were ready for battle. The ferocious beasts in the animal pens, big and small, were trembling. They had no choice. The Yanjiao people were too scary when they were ready for battle. Although the Yanjiao tribe was on a large mountain, with the strength of the chief and Guangyi, it did not take long for them to get to Duo Kang's location from the mountain. At first, the people who had hurried over from the mountains had thought that it was an invasion by other tribes or a powerful fearsome beast. However, when they arrived, they did not see a single fearsome beast. The dinosaur buried its head in the ground in the animal pen was completely ignored. Looking around, there were no other tribesmen around except for a few young people who were standing there in a daze. Usually, when something big happened to the tribe, it would be on a larger scale. However, the situation here was completely different from what they had imagined. Duo Kong, what happened? Chief Zheng Luo looked around and asked. The others who arrived were also confused. The first thing they did when they arrived was to look for beasts. When they did not find any, they looked for people from other tribes. Their eyes lingered on Zhui and Tao Zheng for a while, asking what happened. But the two of them did not know anything. They did not understand Duo Kang's actions at all. It was the first time they had even heard of the horn. They only knew about the horn. When they were young, they heard about it from their elders. They even dreamed about taking the horn when they competed for the position of leader of the hunting team. But when they saw Duo Kang blow the horn with their own eyes, they were so shocked their eyes almost popped out of their sockets. Actually, when Duo Kang was blowing the horn, he didn't think that such a misunderstanding would occur. At that time, he didn't have time to think about anything else. When he heard the chief's question, he came back to his senses. However, he didn't answer. Instead, he raised his hand and pointed. Chief Zheng Luo looked in the direction Duo Kang was pointing and frowned. There was an unfamiliar young man standing there, but he could feel the Yanjiao aura on him. He was from their tribe, not an enemy. Just as he was about to ask Duo Kang what the problem was, Zheng Luo's eyes widened in disbelief. He quickly walked over to Xiao Xian and looked closely at the bone necklace Xiao Xian was wearing. The most important thing was the bright red ball on the necklace. Seeing the ball, even the usually calm Chief Zheng Luo's breathing quickened. You! Zheng Luo's voice trembled uncontrollably. You, Xiao Xian looked at the man in front of him. He was so emotional that he could not speak properly. He grinned. Do you remember the Yanjiao tribe in the fearsome beast forest? Many people did not understand. Where was the fearsome beast forest? Weren't there many fearsome beasts in the forest? Which forest were they talking about? But as the chief, Zheng Luo knew very well. Because of this, Zheng Luo's thoughts were confirmed. You come with me. Zheng Luo did not say much. He urgently needed the shamaness to confirm it again. Although he was leaning towards that guess, it had been nearly 1,000 years. His ancestors had not met this person for generations, but now he had suddenly appeared in front of them without warning. No one could believe it at once. Zheng Luo did not care about the others. He dragged Xiao Xian up the mountain and ran away in a flash. Everyone was left in a daze. They were confused by their chief and leader's huge reaction. What was going on? Was there still danger? Should the people who had gathered here disperse? Duo Kang, who had regained his senses, quickly followed behind. He didn't care about the other people's questions. He didn't have the time to talk to these people. Moreover, without the shaman's permission, he couldn't tell them anything. He just asked the people who had gathered to disperse and then rushed up the mountain. Others may not know about the bone necklace, but Duo Kong remembered it clearly. After all, when he took over as the leader of the hunting group, he had touched the box and made a vow. It belonged to the ancestors. He had been told the story of the bone necklace. The shaman, who had been sitting on the mountain, looked worried. She had a feeling that something was going to happen, but it did not seem like a disaster. What was it? Hearing the commotion, the shamaness looked up and saw the usually calm Xing Luo hurriedly pulling a young man over like the wind. Ever since Xing Luo took over as the chief, the shaman had never seen him so anxious. What's wrong? The shaman got up. Before she could finish, she looked at the bone necklace around Xiao Xian's neck. She exclaimed, "The elder's bone necklace?" There was no mistake, it was the elder's bone necklace. She had 3 bone ornaments in her hands, but they were all dim and lifeless, as if they were in a deep sleep. In the past, the voodoo puppets all felt that their ancestors were disappointed in their actions. Many voodoo puppets left with guilt in their hearts. But now, the strange young man standing in front of them was wearing an elder's bone ornament. The ball in the elder's bone ornament was the fiery red bead in the stories left behind by their ancestors. It was the same bead that carried a totemic flame. Chapter 376. You're really from there? The shamaness looked in a certain direction. Xiao Xian knew what she meant. He nodded. Yes. You're all here. Where did you come from? What's with the elder's bone ornament you're wearing? The shaman, who usually showed a serious face to others and was a man of few words, was now full of eagerness and asked several questions in a row. Xiao Xian answered her questions one by one. He told her everything he knew about the history of 1,000 years ago. He told her about the life of the other tribe that had been wandering outside for nearly 1,000 years. He also told her about his return to the old haunt. He also mentioned the other tribes and the slave masters in the desert. The slave masters in the desert were at war. I came across the underwater passage by chance. The others are still there. Xiao Xian said. The shamaness and Chief Xing Luo's eyes reddened when they heard that the other branch of the tribe had lived alone for almost 1,000 years. They had suffered so much and suffered for so long. The Flaming Horns tribe mentioned in the records left by their ancestors was very powerful in the past. However, 1,000 years ago, there was a change and internal disagreements, which caused this powerful tribe to split into 2 halves and wander about on their own. As for this bone ornament, I found the remains of our ancestors in a stone worm's cave during a hunt. The ancestor was wearing this. Later, the shamaness gave it to me. When I returned to the old haunt, the fire seed was reignited in the fire pit. This bone ornament lit up. Xiao Xian also told her about the flame giant that had appeared at that time. Hearing this, the shamaness, who was usually calmer than Chief Xing Luo, suddenly stood up. Her voice was severely distorted, and the hand holding her walking stick was shaking. Really? Really? Xiao Xian took off the bone ornament necklace and handed it to the shamaness for a closer look. The shamaness threw away her walking stick and carefully took the bone ornament from Xiao Xian with both hands. It was like she was holding the most precious treasure in the world. Her eyes were sincere. She bent her knees and knelt in a certain direction. 2 streams of tears flowed down her wrinkled skin and dripped to the ground. This was the first time in her life that she had lost her composure. Chief Xing Luo stood beside the shamaness, facing the direction and bowing with the highest etiquette of the Flaming Horn tribe. Although they still had a fire pit here, it was no longer the same as before. Plus, that direction was where their roots were, where their ancestors lived. Bang! A figure pushed the door open and came in. This person was originally angry and had a questioning look on his face, but when he saw the chief and shaman kneeling on the ground, he was so scared that his face turned pale. This was because the position of the door was in the direction where the shaman was kneeling, and when he came in, he happened to be in front of the shaman and the chief. The man immediately jumped away as if he had been stabbed all over. His anger and questioning just now were all gone. He stuttered, "What happened?" Not far from the door, there were many people, including Duo Kong and Guang Yi. However, they didn't dare to push the door open, so they waited outside for the chief to speak. The door of the chief's room was made of soundproof wood. They couldn't hear the conversation inside at all. They could only suppress their curiosity and wait anxiously outside. But now that they saw the scene of the chief and the shamaness kneeling down, they scattered to both sides and looked inside with even stronger curiosity. After this interruption, the chief and shaman calmed down a little. Although they were still excited, they already knew what they wanted to know the most. There was no need to rush. He called a few people to come in. Zheng Luo glared at the person who had just barged in. The other person also knew what he did wasn't right this time. He scratched the back of his head and didn't say anything. Those who were called in were the ones with the highest status in the tribe. Some were young and some were old. The shaman repeated Xiao Xian's words and introduced Xiao Xian's identity. After listening to the shaman's narration, everyone was dumbfounded. Some people knew about that part of history and were equally excited, while others were more vague about it. Now that they heard it, they were very shocked. So their tribe was not complete. Xiao Xian is so young. It wasn't easy for him to find this place alone. An old man sighed and looked at Xiao Xian with love. He thought for a moment and added, "Everyone, please take care of him." Duo Kang's mouth twitched. Xiao Xian is stronger than Zhui. He could beat Zhui. Even among the people here, how many of them had the confidence to beat Xiao Xian? Did someone like that need to be taken care of? It was already good enough that he didn't beat them up. Right, Xiao Xian, how did you get into the tribe? Duo Kong asked. Could it be that the warriors guarding the tribe had taken a nap during their patrol? Did the guards leave their post? Xiao Xian looked at Guang Yi, who was sitting next to Duo Kong. He answered, "Uncle Guang Yi brought me in." When he heard his name, he looked up to see everyone looking at him in confusion. Guang Yi was even more confused. "I brought you in." Obviously, he didn't remember Xiao Xian. If he had more time to interact with him, if he fought with Xiao Xian, Guang Yi would have a deeper impression of him. But he didn't. So when he looked at Xiao Xian's face, he still couldn't match him. "Yesterday afternoon, when the sun was about to set, you took me to Guang Yi's house," Xiao Xian reminded him. Guang Yi thought for a moment and understood. "So it was you." The chief and the others were speechless. Duo Kong thought to himself, "Guang Yi, you idiot. Do you know that I was so shocked that I couldn't even blow the horn today?" The shaman, who was drinking water to moisten his throat, calmed down and said solemnly, "Xiao Xian, since you're an elder in that branch of the Flaming Horns tribe, it's the same here." Everyone looked at the shamaness. The position of elder had been vacant for many years, right? It was even a taboo because mentioning it would make the shamaness sad. Was it finally going to be lifted? And to a young man about the same age as their sons and grandsons. This involved their ancestors and another Yanjiao tribe. Even if they had other thoughts, they wouldn't say anything. After all, Xiao Xian's appearance was very important to the tribe. Plus, he was wearing the elder's bone ornament. The shamaness didn't care how much the others accepted. She frowned and tapped her walking stick on the ground to quiet them down. When she turned to look at Xiao Xian, her gaze softened. "Xiao Xian, you said it yourself that you can't be sure if you can safely go through the underwater tunnel again. Why don't you stay here and wait for everyone to come up with a better plan? Then we can go back together. After all, that's our Yanjiao tribe's roots." Everyone else agreed. They couldn't wait to leave and see their long-lost brother. Xiao Xian nodded. Okay. He also wanted to find a better and safer way to bring everyone back. If everyone here went back, would Yanjiao be able to regain its former glory? After a pause, the shamaness said, "In 2 days, the tribe will hold a ceremony to welcome Xiao Xian. Everyone, get ready." After the important matters were discussed, the shamaness began to drive everyone away. When everyone left, the shamaness took Xiao Xian to her place and showed him some of the ancestors' records. Since Xiao Xian was an elder, he had the right to look through those records. The records were about their experiences and the changes in the fire seed. No one was allowed to enter the shamaness place without her permission. Xiao Xian was in the room the shamaness had arranged for him. He carefully looked through the records that had been passed down. In the next room, the shamaness took out the box containing the elder's bone ornaments. There were 3 bone ornaments in the box. The beads inlaid on the bone ornaments were dull. They couldn't be compared to the one Xiao Xian was wearing. They were like rusty swords, dull and dull. Looking at the 3 bone ornaments, the shamaness decided to take them out during the ceremony. Maybe they would be happy to see their compatriots. Chapter 377. Xiao Xian looked at the animal skin scroll in his hand. This was already the 10th scroll. Beside him was the food that the shaman had brought over, but Xiao Xian didn't touch it at all. From the moment he sat down until now, he hadn't looked at anything else besides the animal skin scroll in his hand. Previously, when Xiao Xian had told the shaman and chief about the other branch of the tribe, the 2 of them had felt that the other branch's experience was too bitter. But now, looking at the records in his hand, Xiao Xian realized that this branch's experience wasn't much better. Back then, they had paid a huge price. Less than 1/10 of them had made it here safely. It could be said that they had suffered heavy losses. Even those who had made it here had varying degrees of injuries. From these records, Xiao Xian learned that as early as 1,000 years ago, people in the tribe had discovered that the fire seed was weakening, but they hadn't been able to find a solution. It wasn't until the appearance of the slave masters that they saw an opportunity. The reason why the slave masters were able to travel from this continent to the other side was because of the great changes in the world 1,000 years ago. The mountains became valleys, and the sea became land. The underwater passage that Xiao Xian had walked through had indeed risen because of the great changes in the world. Then, a group of slave masters had walked over that bridge. The place near the bridge was the dry land that Xiao Xian had seen at the beginning. In fact, it was used by the slave masters here to exile the sinners. The environment there was harsh, and there wasn't even a single tribe back then. It was even worse than the current drought. In the desolate land, even if there were many exiles, there weren't many who survived. If not for this, when the bridge rose because of the great changes in the world, there would have been more slave masters who had crossed over. Among the slave masters who had crossed over 1,000 years ago, there were a few geniuses. These people were mentioned in the animal skin scrolls. They were all people that the Yanjiao people had come into contact with. Among them, a person named Mu Han was mentioned the most. According to the records on the animal skin scroll, the reason why the slave masters were able to rise over there was mainly because of this Mu Han. Looking at the records on the animal skin scroll, the Yanjiao ancestors had come into contact with this Mu Han quite a bit. Back then, the chief of the Yanjiao tribe who had brought his people out to avoid disaster had fought with Mu Han. The 2 sides weren't enemies, but they weren't friends either. After knowing each other for a long time, they understood each other very well. Later, the chief of the Yanjiao had won a contest and obtained some secret information about the slave masters from Mu Han. At that time, the bridge in the sea was already very unstable. Whether it was the Yanjiao shaman or some people who were good at divination with Mu Han, they all said that the bridge wouldn't last for long. It was also at that time that the Yanjiao tribe had the biggest disagreement. The chief wanted to go to the other side of the bridge to find a solution to the weakening of the fire seed, but the shaman strongly opposed it. At that time, the next shaman of the tribe had already been decided. His name was Qi, and he was the successor that the shaman had spent a lot of time and effort grooming. He also had high hopes for him because Qi was indeed a genius. He was also one of the few people who had the power of inheritance before becoming the shaman. Just like how Xiao Xian had helped the shaman draw the Wu roll, Qi had also helped the shaman draw the Wu roll very early on. But in the end, that genius stood on the chief's side. Together with the chief, they brought half of the tribesmen and half of the fire seed from the sea bridge to the mainland. They experienced all kinds of difficulties and dangers. They were ostracized, targeted, and mocked until they came to this forest. After that, there were 10 full volumes of animal skin. All of them recorded how Chi had found a way to suppress the weakening of the fire seed and the mystery of the disappearance of the fire seed of the slave owners and the tribes here. Finally, this genius found a solution when he was old. The fire seed hasn't disappeared. It still exists in the blood of the Yinjiao people. It will continue to exist with the blood of the Yinjiao people. Reading up to this point, Xiao Xian thought that the other half of the fire seed had already merged with the Yinjiao people's bodies. At the back of these scrolls was a very simple drawing. It was the last time Qi had knelt down to the shaman before he came with the chief. Did he regret it? From the words and drawings Qi wrote at the end of his life, it could be seen that he didn't regret it. But he did feel guilt and regret. He missed the old place very much. But Qi knew that the bridge had already sunk, and he didn't know when it would rise again. Even if it rose again, he wouldn't be able to see it. However, Qi believed that when the bridge appeared again, the tribesmen would be able to return to the tribe with the solution he had found. One day, we will return to the old place. At the end of the scroll, there was a sentence similar to what Xiao Xian had seen written by Zan on the stone room. But they didn't know that the Yinjiao tribe that had stayed behind had bad luck. As they walked, they found that the earth had split open, and then a giant river had appeared, completely cutting off their way back. They had lived a savage life for nearly 1,000 years. Seeing this, Xiao Xian couldn't help but sigh. It hadn't been easy. Whether it was the shaman or Qi and the chief, no one was truly satisfied. After all, Yinjiao had been split into two. In their eyes, they were all sinners who had let down their ancestors. Looking at the scrolls left behind by Qi and the chief, one could see that their greatest wish was that one day, the two tribes would be reunited. Yinjiao's prosperity and glory were indispensable. From the records left behind by the chief, Xiao Xian also discovered some things about Mu Han. Because he had interacted with Mu Han a lot, the records left behind by the chief were mostly about Mu Han. It was said that Mu Han had been exiled because he had been tricked. Otherwise, a genius like him wouldn't have been exiled so easily. But who would have thought that this exiled person would encounter a fortuitous encounter and cross the bridge from one side to the other? In the chief's records, there was a paragraph that said, Mu Han felt that this was a paradise. This referred to the other side of the bridge, where Yinjiao and the other tribes lived. There were weak people like wanderers and prisoners of war who weren't valued. These were all excellent slaves because these people didn't have power, but thirsted for power. This kind of person was the best slave. There were too many suitable slaves, and this completely ignited Mu Han's ambition. But he also resented the people who had exiled him. He wanted to kill them one day, so he abandoned his original surname, Mu, and changed it to the more murderous surname, Shi. Back then, the chief, who knew Mu Han very well, had written some comments on the scroll. The general idea was that Mu Han's life had been at a disadvantage because he had shown off his abilities. He clearly had talent and power, but he had been tricked in the end. Xiao Xian recalled the several big cities on the other side of the desert, as well as the surnames of the city lords there. There were no surnames of Mu and Shi. No, there was a surname of Shi. Could it be that Mu Han had realized his own shortcomings and hoped that his juniors would know how to conceal their strength, endure silently, and trick others without batting an eyelid? Was that why he had changed the murderous Shi to Shi? Thinking about it, it was really possible. Didn't Shi Shu and his gang silently launch a war that swept through the entire desert? Perhaps Shi Shu's understanding of Yinjiao was not because of Daoyu, but because of the records left by their ancestor, Mu Han. Whether it was true or not, Xiao Xian now had no way to investigate, so he couldn't ask Shi Shu for the real reason. Xiao Xian read the records left by Qi, who had changed Yinjiao, again carefully rolled up the scroll and put it back. If he could go back, these were all very important things. They were the results of Qi's life, and also the antidote to change the weakening of Yanjiao's fire seed. Xiao Xian stretched his stiff body and looked out of the window. Yang Guang was really brilliant. Chapter 378. Seeing Xiao Xian come out of the house, the shaman's serious face showed a rare smile. You've seen it all. Yes, I've seen it all. Xiao Xian came in front of the shaman and sat cross-legged on the animal skin cushion on the ground. He couldn't let the shaman look up at him all the time. He was worried about her neck. Our ancestors have always wanted to go back to the old land. Every year, we send people to the other side of the sea to see if there is a chance to go back. But every year, the results are disappointing. I didn't expect to meet you. The shaman sighed. I don't know if I can go back there safely. At that time, I was forced to do so. I was lucky enough to survive, but I don't know if I can go back again. Why don't I go and see? Xiao Xian asked. Please don't. The shaman hurriedly stopped him. She didn't want Xiao Xian to take this risk. It was rare to meet people from the other side. What if something happened? She couldn't even cry. Xiao Xian recalled the ancestors' experiences recorded in the animal skin scroll and thought about what he had encountered. He said, when I came from the bottom of the sea, there was only some dry seaweed in the passage. There was nothing else. I haven't seen the red and blue flowers recorded in the ancestors' records. So you'd better not take the risk. The opportunity can wait, but if you're gone, there's no other way. The shaman advised. She was about to say something else when she thought of something. Her whole body trembled and she looked at Xiao Xian in disbelief. You can understand the Wu roll? In the written records, there was no mention of any red or blue flowers in the passage. Only the Wu roll described them in detail. People who didn't understand the Wu roll wouldn't know this. If she hadn't copied it herself and looked at it often, she wouldn't have remembered it so clearly. Yes. Xiao Xian thought that after the people here merged the fire seed into their bodies, there would be some other changes. Maybe they could understand the Wu roll, but now it seemed that this was not the case. Can't others see it? Xiao Xian asked. Can people on your side see it? The shaman was even more shocked. Xiao Xian shook his head. On our side, besides the shaman, I'm the only one who can understand it. You're from the other side? The shaman asked in surprise. No, I'm an elder. We have a shaman on our side. He's about the same age as you, but he's already groomed an excellent successor. Why can't you? At this moment, the old lady imagined a lot of slave owners fighting for power and profit to launch a variety of "you pitting me, I pitted you" drama. The tribe's fire seed hadn't merged with the people, so there were much fewer people who could understand the shaman paintings. According to the records of the ancestors, almost everyone who could understand the shaman paintings became the shaman of the tribe, just like Qi 1,000 years ago. Therefore, the old lady felt that since there was a person with talent comparable to Qi in the past, the shaman of the tribe should train Xiao Xian well. If shaman, the shaman thought. No, he said it many times, but I refused. Xiao Xian explained. He couldn't let the old man be the scapegoat. Why don't you want to? The shaman wondered. She hadn't found the most suitable successor in the tribe. Although there were a few people who could see some of the things on the Wu roll, they couldn't really understand it. They needed to be trained for a long time. They were far from Xiao Xian's level. I'm not suitable. Xiao Xian said. He couldn't tell the shaman that he was born restless, always running around and causing trouble. If such a person became a witch, he didn't know if it would lead the tribe in a strange direction. Moreover, in such a big environment, Xiao Xian didn't think his survival wisdom was better than these people. She wanted to persuade Xiao Xian to take over her position, but after hearing this, the shaman swallowed her words. She wanted to scold Xiao Xian, but she couldn't bear to. The muscles on her face trembled due to the complex changes in her emotions. She suddenly had the urge to kowtow to the ancestors who had passed away, to vent the emotions in her heart that were like 10,000 beasts running wildly. After chatting with the shaman for a while, Xiao Xian came out. As soon as Xiao Xian came out, he was stopped. Chief Zheng Luo took him to a place on the top of the mountain. It used to be an open space, but now it was busy. Stones were piled up, and thick logs were moved over. The sound of chopping could be heard. A house was being built here. Chief Zheng Luo had ordered people to build it for Xiao Xian. It might not be finished before tonight. You can sleep at my place for the night, and it will be finished tomorrow. You don't have to worry about anything. There are animal hides that have been dried, baked pottery, and so on. Zheng Luo pointed in that direction, then shouted at the people who kept glancing over curiously, "Pay attention to what you're doing, don't look to the side. You, stop looking. You almost chopped off your own hand." The people who were yelled at quickly looked away. Even though they were curious about Xiao Xian, they didn't dare to wander off recklessly with the chief here. After Zheng Luo showed Xiao Xian the house under construction, he continued walking up the mountain. Along the way, he introduced some of the more special places in the tribe, such as the fire pit for sacrificial ceremonies, and the storehouse for centralized storage. Xiao Xian felt like a monkey in a crowd. He was surrounded by curious gazes, as if they were looking at something rare. When he wasn't paying attention, he was surrounded by a circle of people. When Zheng Luo yelled at him, the crowd dispersed. After a while, new people gathered. When the chief yelled again, the crowd dispersed again, repeating the process over and over again. They couldn't be blamed for being curious. Previously, when Duo Kang's horn sounded, it scared the tribesmen into preparing for battle. In the end, the chief and the other leaders went up the mountain in silence. The cause of the incident was a young man, and it was said that this young man was from the Yanjiao. Could he be a stray descendant of the tribe? But even if he was a stray descendant, he wouldn't be personally accompanied by the chief. A few years ago, there were people who disappeared for a long time who came back with their wives and children, but the shaman and the leaders never treated them like this. Looking at the smile on the chief's face, it was the first time they realized that the chief could smile so amiably. TSK, it gave them goosebumps. What happened at the foot of the mountain, the strange expressions of the chiefs and elders, and the welcoming ceremony that would be held in 2 days, all made the people in the tribe curious, just like the bubbles in the boiling water, bubbling and bubbling. Duo Kang's son, Duo Li, was gossiping with Tao Zheng and the others. They had just been yelled at by the chief and were grilling meat while discussing Xiao Xian. As they were talking, Tao Zheng elbowed Duo Li, who was gnawing on a beast leg, and pointed his chin in a direction, indicating for him to look there. Duo Li raised his head and saw his father passing by with a pensive expression. Without wiping his mouth, Duo Li hugged the beast leg and ran over, shouting, "Father, father! I haven't returned to the fire seed yet, what are you shouting for?" Duo Kang scolded. The tribesmen would also be cremated at the fire pit after they died. They believed that the souls of the deceased would return to the fire seed with their ancestors and their descendants. "Aren't I afraid you'll run away?" Duo Li handed the beast leg that he had gnawed onto his father to please him. Duo Kang looked at the beast leg with disdain and ignored it, planning to leave. "Hey, don't go. Tell us about that Xiao Xian," Duo Li hurriedly said. Tao Zheng and the others who were grilling meat by the fire pricked up their ears, afraid that they would miss a word. If it was in the past, Duo Kang would definitely notice that they were eavesdropping, but now he was full of thoughts and didn't pay attention to them at all. Duo Kang looked at his son's curious eyes and thought about how to describe the two tribes that shared the same bloodline. After a moment of silence, Duo Kang said, "If I tell you, yes." "Tell me what?" Duo Li looked at his father expectantly. Tao Zheng and the others pricked up their ears even higher, wishing that they could stretch their ears a little longer to eavesdrop more clearly. "If I tell you that you have a brother," Duo Li's hands trembled and he almost dropped the beast leg he was hugging. "Brother, brother? What brother?" Duo Li stuttered. Duo Kang pondered over his words and continued, "Same father, same mother, born at the same time as you, biological brother. Thud! The beast leg fell from Duo Li's hands. Chapter 379. After being born for so many years, he was the only child in the family. Since when did he have a brother? Duo Li stared blankly at his father. On the other side, Tao Zheng and the others who were eavesdropping were also shocked by the news. But after thinking about it, they felt that something was wrong. Xiao Xian didn't look like Duo Li. Father, Xiao Xian and I are brothers. Brothers? Duo Li pointed at the figure in the distance and asked. I'm just giving an example. Duo Kong also realized that his son had misunderstood. How stupid. But Xiao Xian's background wasn't something they dared to talk about unless the chief or shaman said it themselves. Many people in the tribe knew that the Yanjiao tribe didn't belong to this place, but came from the other side of the sea. But after 1,000 years, generations of people told stories of the past to their descendants. Now, many people only treated those stories as stories. If Duo Kong hadn't taken over the position of hunting leader, he wouldn't have had the chance to know more. As for the young people nowadays, they usually didn't think so much. Anyway, you guys just treat Xiao Xian as your brother. Duo Kong didn't know how to express himself, so he just said this sentence. But then he felt that it wasn't right. Xiao Xian was an elder, and these kids should treat him with respect. 2 days before the welcoming ceremony, the atmosphere in the tribe was strange. Some were happy, some were curious, and all the topics revolved around Xiao Xian, this new face that had suddenly appeared. As Duo Kang's words spread, the people who didn't have much gossip and entertainment were excited. Every day, many people would go up the mountain to watch. If it wasn't for the chief and other elders, they would have personally talked to Xiao Xian. On the other hand, Xiao Xian experienced the feeling of being watched as if he was a rare object. He also felt the enthusiasm of the tribesmen. The house had been built. Beds, tables, chairs, pottery, and other things had all been prepared. On the day they moved in, many people had sent things to Xiao Xian's house. Some had sent meat, grains, furs, and so on. As hunters, every family had stored furs in their house. In just half a day, a large number of furs had piled up in Xiao Xian's new house. Xiao Xian silently engraved these people's gifts in his mind. Although these people were simply expressing their enthusiasm and didn't intend to receive any benefits from Xiao Xian still remembered their kindness. A group of aunties came over from the mountain, each of them holding a straw rope as a ruler. They held the straw rope and pointed it at Xiao Xian before they happily left. The next day, several sets of clothes were sent over. Some were made of animal skin, some were made of cloth, and some were made of animal skin. The clothes for the ceremony had already been prepared. The animal skin used was from the shamaness herself. It was an excellent fearsome beast skin and was very sturdy. Because there was no fire seed, the ceremony was a little different from what Xiao Xian knew, but there wasn't much of a difference. On the day of the ceremony, when the sun set and the sky darkened, the people at the foot of the mountain walked up one after another. Everyone was neatly dressed and wore clean clothes. Xiao Xian noticed that on the day of the ceremony, most of the tribesmen wore animal skin. Almost no one wore cloth. Most of the totemic warriors wore sleeveless animal skin, especially the intermediate and advanced totemic warriors. Every time there was a ceremony, they would expose their arms to show off their totemic tattoos. This was also a chance to show off their strength. The ceremonial clothes prepared by the tribe for Xiao Xian were sleeveless as well. In the eyes of Chief Xing Luo and the others, this was a good opportunity for Xiao Xian to show off his strength. After all, not many people saw the battle between Xiao Xian and Zhao. The others only heard about it. Seeing was believing. Seeing with one's own eyes would leave a deeper impression. It would also give them a better understanding of Elder Xiao Xian. Because of the festive nature of the ceremony, many of the warriors inherited the customs passed down from their ancestors. They brought along various hunting fruits, sharp horns, bone ornaments and so on. Men and women of all ages were dressed up. In comparison, Xiao Xian looked refreshed. Xiao Xian had not gone hunting since he arrived here. To make it easier for him to travel, he did not collect any souvenirs from his hunts. The only thing he wore was an elder's bone ornament. Among the white bone ornaments, a fiery red ball stood out. Even at night, as long as there was a little light, it would reflect the light of Mars. Are you ready? The shamaness looked at Xiao Xian, who was standing beside her. Yes. Although this wasn't the tribe he was familiar with, the Yanjiao atmosphere was very strong. Xiao Xian quickly adapted. Go. The shamaness said as she walked towards the fire pit. Xiao Xian walked in the opposite direction. The welcoming ceremony required walking from the bottom of the mountain to the top. This was what every newcomer to Yanjiao had to go through. There was no fire in the fire pit at the top of the mountain, only torches. Xiao Xian waited at the bottom of the mountain. Beside him were two groups of people sent by the shamaness to protect him in case anything happened. The chanting from the top of the mountain could be heard faintly. The entire mountain was immersed in a solemn atmosphere. A red light flashed at the top of the mountain. The shamaness had lit a fire in the fire pit. With the sound of a horn, Xiao Xian walked up the mountain. There were many torches around, illuminating the path up the mountain. It was probably to make it easier for Xiao Xian to see the path. Chapter 380. In the tribe, every person with a high position would swear to the fire pit and the three bone ornaments before taking over. When Zheng Luo took over as chief and Duo Kong took over as leader of the hunting team, they all went through the same procedure. So when the shamaness took these out, no one was surprised to see them. Except for those who were very close to the box, the others only knew that there was such a box, but could not see what was inside. If not for this, Duo Kong wouldn't have been the only one who recognized the necklace when Xiao Xian fought Zhui 2 days ago. Xiao Xian bowed to the box. This was the way tribesmen greeted their ancestors. According to the original plan, when the box was taken out, it would be Xiao Xian's turn to say his oath. But those closest to the fire pit, such as Duo Kong and a few elders, waited and waited. Xiao Xian still did not speak. What's wrong? Did he forget his oath? Did he not remember what to say? Or was he so nervous that he forgot everything? Even Chief Zheng Luo looked at Xiao Xian in confusion. But when he saw the excitement on the shamaness' face, he realized that something had changed. Tears glistened in the shamaness' eyes as she stared unblinkingly at the box in her hands. The three bone ornaments that had been sleeping quietly in the box suddenly brightened when Xiao Xian came closer, as if the dust covering them had been swept away. Even if it was not as bright as the one worn by Xiao Xian, it was enough to make the shamaness happy. No one knew better than these adept puppets what the balls and the bone ornaments represented. In the past, every time the adept puppets saw the dim balls on the bone ornaments, they would feel a deep sense of guilt, as if they had been abandoned by their ancestors. But now, this change gave the shamaness hope. The ancestors had not left. They had always been here, guarding the Yanjiao people. The Yanjiao people worshipped their ancestors, and these were left behind by the first shamaness. They represented the most powerful shamaness in the Yanjiao tribe. If he wasn't holding the stone box containing the bone ornament, he would have knelt down immediately upon seeing the bone ornament's transformation. Xiao Xian also saw the changes in the three bone ornaments. When he received the bone ornaments in another tribe, he learned from the shamaness that the first shamaness had left behind 6 balls and made them into 6 bone ornaments. Xiao Xian had seen 3 of them before, and Xiao Xian finally saw the remaining 3. It was good that they were still here. They were not lost. The 6 bone ornaments would be reunited one day. According to the shamaness instructions, Xiao Xian transformed the totem power in his body into a form outside his body, and separated a part of it to connect to the fire pit. This was something he had to do before he made the oath. The others in the tribe had connected to the fire pit in this way, and made the fire rise. However, Xiao Xian didn't expect that the moment he separated the totem power to connect to the fire pit, there would be a drastic change. He didn't even get the chance to make the oath he had prepared. All his attention was attracted by this change. The totem flame in his mind became active, and at the same time, the fire in the fire pit rushed up. The sudden rise of the fire in the fire pit attracted everyone's attention. Almost at the same time, all the torches around, including the bonfires on the mountain and at the foot of the mountain, were extinguished in an instant. The only fire on the entire mountain was the flame in the fire pit. The elders in the tribe had lived to this age, and had participated in countless ceremonies and ceremonies. They had also heard many stories about the fire pit from their fathers and grandfathers, but they had never seen this scene before. Between heaven and earth, only the fire on the mountain top seemed to exist. It was like a king standing on high, looking down on all living beings. The rising fire rolled up, and a pattern of 2 horns appeared in it. It turned from blurry to clear. This was a pattern that every Yanjiao person was familiar with. They had seen it in the fire pit during the ceremony, but it was not as big or as clear as this one. The temperature of his blood seemed to be rising, like boiling soup, rushing and cheering in his body. The vibration came from his bone marrow, and the totem patterns on his body seemed to be brighter than before. This is. The shamaness looked at the high fire in the fire pit, and was shocked to the point of being sluggish. However, this was not the end. Soon, the shamaness was disturbed by another wave of fluctuation. She looked at the stone box in her hand. The round beads on the bone ornaments in the stone box began to glow red. It was not the light reflected, but the light emitted by the beads themselves. The light on the beads grew brighter and brighter. Finally, a flame emerged from the beads. 3 bone ornaments and 3 round beads appeared at the same time. Even those who were standing a little far away and could not see the bone ornaments clearly could see the fire coming from the box. The air was scorching hot, but none of the Yanjiao people were burned. On the contrary, they felt an unprecedented peace of mind, and a touch of being protected. This unprecedented change surprised every Yanjiao person gathered here. They threw all other thoughts out of their minds, and just stared at the fire pit. On the bone ornaments worn by Xiao Xian, the flames from the round beads began to expand. In the box held by the shamaness, the flames from the 3 bone ornaments began to expand at the same pace. The shamaness and Xiao Xian were standing by the fire pit. Both of them were wrapped in flames. If it were not for the fact that they were unharmed and unscathed, the others would have panicked. The shamaness' body was stiff, and she carefully held the stone box. She did not even dare to shake her hands, for fear that she would disrupt this change. Although she did not know what was going to happen next, she knew that it would be of great benefit to the Yanjiao tribe. Compared to the shocked Yanjiao people and the excited shamaness, Xiao Xian was much calmer. He had also guessed what was going to happen. Such a change had happened once before. Looking at the rising flames, Xiao Xian looked up at the sky. Seeing this, the shamaness also looked up. When the others saw their actions, although they did not understand why, they also looked up. Some people even wondered if this was a new ritual to pay respects to the ancestors. However, they soon found that they were wrong. As the balls of flames rose and gathered in the air, they formed a huge human silhouette. This silhouette was quickly becoming clearer and more complete. The fire in the fire pit grew stronger and stronger. A flame giant appeared at the top of the mountain. Every Yanjiao person was shocked by the appearance of this flame giant. When the people who were paying attention to all of this came back to their senses, they found that they were already kneeling on the ground. As the flame giant opened his arms, the flames from the fire pit suddenly rose into the sky, as if they were going to break through the sky. The nearby mountains and the thick dark clouds in the sky that blocked the moonlight were all dyed with a layer of fire. The majestic aura spread out, and in an instant, it swept through the entire mountain, spreading to every corner. Yan Zhan, who did not spread his flames, used his aura to intimidate everything. There were still some captured beasts in the animal pens at the foot of the mountain. At this moment, every beast in the pens, no matter if it was an ordinary beast or a fearsome beast like the dinosaur, was trembling and wanted to turn into a stone. The dinosaur that was tied up by thick vines and thrown on the ground struggled violently. It wanted to dig a hole in the ground with its hooves and bury its head in it to relieve the fear in its heart. On the other side of the man-made river that surrounded the mountain where Yanjiao was located, there were some restless beasts in the forest on the other side. At this moment, as if they had been hit by a stick, they all turned around and left one after another. In the Taiha tribe, which was closest to Yanjiao, according to the custom, those who were not assigned to patrol would go to bed when the sky turned dark. At this time, many people were already in bed. Some warriors had just laid down and were about to fall asleep, but their bodies suddenly shook, and the hair on their necks stood up. They were so scared that they did not feel sleepy at all. They rolled out of bed and did not bother to put on their clothes. They ran out of the house to higher ground or open space, and then looked in the direction of Yanjiao. The two tribes were not too close to each other, so they could not see what was happening over there. They could only see the red sky and the forest. In the dark forest, there was a small conspicuous patch of fiery red. It was a strange scene. What was Yanjiao doing over there? Chapter 381. On the day of the welcoming ceremony, Shao Xian, the newly appointed young elder, made everyone in the Yanjiao tribe witness an unforgettable scene. If there were doubts about Shao Xian's appointment as elder, after tonight's ceremony, all of them were forgotten. No one objected to this position, second only to the shamaness and the chief. As for Shao Xian, the tribe's respect for him grew. Every time they saw Shao Xian, they would think of the flame giant that rose from Shao Xian's body. The shock that came from deep within their bones was still clear when they recalled it. After the welcoming ceremony, Shao Xian was officially introduced to everyone. As for Shao Xian's background, it wasn't important. To the tribesmen, they only needed to know that Shao Xian was an elder. As for the rest, if the shamaness and the chief didn't say anything, they wouldn't ask. This was very similar to the personality of the other Yanjiao tribe. If there was a moment of doubt, they would gossip in private and forget about it after a while. There will be a hunt in 7 days. Shao Xian, you should come with everyone, Chief Xing Luo said to Shao Xian. Group activities were a way to speed up integration. Hunting would allow Shao Xian to better adapt to the tribe. Moreover, Xing Luo believed in Shao Xian's strength. If he could come here safely on his own, and as a senior totemic warrior, his hunting skills wouldn't be bad. Okay, Shao Xian replied. Xing Luo also wanted to give Shao Xian some bronze wares, but Shao Xian refused. After a few days in the tribe, Shao Xian had a general understanding of the tribe's situation. Although many tribes used metal wares, most of them were traded from the slave masters. The core seeds were in the hands of the slave masters. Moreover, the core seeds here were much larger than the ones in the desert. The slave masters who were exiled 1,000 years ago only brought 3 small core seeds with them. The ones left in the main camp were all big guys with abundant metal sources. Otherwise, they wouldn't be so generous as to trade for bronze wares. However, the price of these bronze wares was also high. Many things needed to be exchanged for them. Before the children of the tribe went hunting for the first time, they would be given a bronze sword or other objects by their parents as a gift. Sometimes, such a tool would accompany them for a lifetime. A sword or an axe, etc. If there was a gap during a hunt, the tribe had a coppersmith. Although his skills were not top-notch and could not be compared to the talents of the slave owners, he could still deal with some basic situations. He could reforge the broken copper into a sharp weapon. Warriors like Xing Luo had excellent hunting skills, so naturally they could trade for more bronze wares. However, Shao Xian didn't lack bronze wares to hunt. If he wanted to trade for bronze wares, he could rely on his own abilities. Thus, while Xing Luo and the others were wondering how Shao Xian would handle the upcoming hunt, they saw Shao Xian moving stone after stone into the house. Ever since bronze wares entered the tribe, more and more people realized the convenience of bronze wares. Stone wares naturally faded out. Although some people still used them, they weren't necessary anymore. Seeing Xiao Xian move stones, the shamaness and the chief felt sad. It turned out that another group of brothers was still using stone wares. Once again rejecting the shamaness, the chief and the elders' good intentions, Xiao Xian focused on crafting stone wares at home. Another reason why Xiao Xian rejected the shamaness and the chief's gifts was that he was used to crafting his own wares. He might not be used to other people's wares. If he wasn't used to it, it would be easy to make mistakes during a hunt. Many people in the tribe couldn't accurately differentiate between stone materials anymore. However, Xiao Xian could tell at a glance. The stones he brought back were knocked down from somewhere outside the tribe. The stone material was above average. It wasn't the best, but it was still passable. If he needed more, he could wait until he found a better stone during a hunt. Thus, every day when everyone passed by Xiao Xian's house, they could hear the clanking sounds from inside. Duo Kong and Guang Yi curiously ran in to watch Xiao Xian craft stone. Duo Kong and Guang Yi watched as Xiao Xian cut the large stone into small pieces and grinded it into shape. Both of them had been using bronzeware for a long time and were amazed. So this was how their ancestors survived when they didn't have bronzeware. Other than the large and small stone wares, there were all kinds of wooden and bone tools, needles, nails, and even miniature boomerangs. Xiao Xian had them all prepared. This time, he planned to hunt more. He had just arrived and received a lot of benefits from everyone. He wanted to repay them. He also wanted to store more goods to exchange for other things in the future. 7 days later, some of the warriors who were going out to hunt gathered at the open space at the foot of the mountain. They were ready to go. Xiao Xian painted some colored mud on his face. This was similar to his experience in the other tribe. Before hunting, they would paint patterns on their faces. But in the past, it was because of tradition and belief. Now, it was used for another purpose, camouflage. When the warriors here used their totemic power, the totemic patterns on their bodies would become brighter. The brighter the totemic power, the brighter the totemic patterns. Therefore, before hunting, they would use a kind of colored mud to cover their faces and exposed arms with a layer of it, making it easier to hide. This colored mud was specially made by the shamaness. When Yanjiao's ancestors came here, they experimented with a type of mud for camouflage. It didn't dry as easily as normal mud. When applied to the face, it wouldn't fall off due to the movements of the facial muscles. It could last for at least 10 days. The hunting team was still led by Duo Kong and Guang Yi. Those who didn't participate in the previous hunt, if they weren't on duty, came this time. For example, Wu Zhan, Tao Zheng, Zhui and the rest of the younger generation were very enthusiastic. With Xiao Xian as a comparison, they were motivated. Especially Zhui, who was still holding back his anger. After checking everyone and lining up, Duo Kong waved his hand. "Let's go!" Roar, the team roared in unison. Then, it was time to sing a hunting song, a tradition of the tribe. Since the beginning of time, there have been our ancestors. When the tribe first rose, hunting was our priority. Spring warmed up, the ice and snow melted. Birds and beasts jumped happily, birds chirped and beasts roared. It was a familiar scene, a familiar feeling. Although it was different from before, the same song and the same atmosphere made Xiao Xian feel like he was back in the beginning, walking down the path of glory with the hunting team. He couldn't help but feel a warmth in his heart. He missed it so much. On the Taiha tribe's side, they were also planning to go hunting. After walking for a while, they heard the Yanjiao team singing again. They instantly panicked. Damn it, the Yanjiao people were here to annoy people. Hunting was exhilarating. Luckily, everyone's hunting areas were separated so they didn't have to bump into each other. Otherwise, the Taiha people would have vomited their breakfast. Chapter 382. Tall trees could be seen everywhere in the dense forest. The trunks near the canopy were so thick that it would take 3 people to wrap their arms around them. However, the trunks near the ground were so thick that it would take 10 people to wrap their arms around them. The roots on the ground were twisted and intertwined, extending to the surroundings. They were like the claws of ancient beasts clinging to the ground. Going through these places was like climbing a slope, but it was not a problem for those who often hunted in the forest. Silhouettes shuttled through the dense forest. After going deep into the forest, the crowd dispersed, and each group went in different directions. This time, it was not a group hunt, so the groups were scattered. Xiao Xian was with some young warriors. There were more than 20 people in the group, including Tao Zheng and Zhui. The leader of this group was Wu Zhan. According to their status, Xiao Xian should have been the leader. However, since it was the first time Xiao Xian had joined the group and was not familiar with the others, he did not take over the leader's position. Everyone in the group cooperated well. At the beginning, everyone was a little cautious because of Xiao Xian. However, after a while, they got used to it and the atmosphere of hunting returned to normal. No words were spoken. Just a movement and a look was enough to know what each other meant. They cooperated well. Before setting off, Tao Zheng had been told by the chief, the leader, his father, and a few uncles to take care of Xiao Xian. Although Xiao Xian was strong and was an elder, he was still young and might not be able to adapt to the rhythm of the hunting group quickly. Therefore, as they got closer to their usual hunting spot, Tao Zheng wondered if he should stop and explain to Xiao Xian first. However, Tao Zheng soon found that Xiao Xian did not need any reminders. In fact, he adapted very well. For example, when they ran into an unusual situation, Tao Zheng made a gesture and the people behind him followed suit. Xiao Xian's movements were not slower than the others. He did not need any reminders from Tao Zheng at all. Behind the bushes in front of them, on a tree that was not too tall, the treetops were shaking. Because of the bushes and dense grass, the people in the group could not see clearly. Tao Zheng made a hand gesture, and the people behind him immediately slowed down. Their footsteps became lighter as they slowly approached. Like agile monkeys, Yu and another person leaped up a nearby tree and looked ahead. If there was prey there, then prepare to hunt. With his special vision, Xiao Xian was able to see through the bushes and see a shadow behind them. Judging from its silhouette, it wasn't very big. Judging from its bones, it was still in its infancy. Jumping up the tree, Zhui glanced over and shook his head at Tao Zheng. There was a clawed beast there. Their head outline looked very much like a horse. Their necks were slightly long and their torsos were very strong. Usually, they walked slowly and appeared to be sluggish. However, when they encountered danger, it was different. Their speed would increase by several levels. Their hooves were not only big, but also hard. Being kicked was not a pleasant feeling. Clawed beasts were also on the hunting team's list of prey, but they did not include cubs. Generally speaking, if there was not a special shortage of food, Yanjiao's warriors would not hunt such cubs in the forest. First, there was no challenge. Even if they hunted one, they could not prove their strength. Second, the cubs did not have much meat. Compared to adult ferocious beasts, they had much less meat. It was better to save their strength for other prey. That was why the warriors were more willing to leave such young beasts for the future or leave them for their descendants to deal with. At this time, the clawed beast that was still in its infancy was supporting itself on its hind legs. It was holding the tree trunk and eating the leaves and fruits on the tree. Its ears were moving, listening to the movements around it. However, it did not notice that there was a hunting team near it. It also did not know that it had escaped because it was not yet an adult. Further ahead, there was a river. There was a sandy land on the bank of the river. There were no traces of other animals around. We usually don't go to the river to get water. It's too dangerous. If we want to get water, we can get it from the trees and grass. Or we can go to the mountain streams. Tao Zheng explained to Xiao Xian in a low voice. What's in the river? Xiao Xian asked. There are fishes with sharp teeth. Sometimes there are anacondas lurking in the river. However, these are not the main reasons. Tao Zheng pointed at the sandy land. There might be bone beasts there. When they are there, the river is especially quiet. The fish and other underwater animals will avoid them. Bone beasts? This was a new name. Xiao Xian had never seen them before. Looking at the sandy land, Xiao Xian did not see anything wrong with it. However, his instincts told him that there was something there. Something dangerous. The bones of the bone beasts are very hard and suitable for making bone objects. The bone knives made are all very good things. However, bone beasts are not easy to hunt. Their skin is too hard and their skulls are more like a layer of hard stone. They are very strong. If we weren't confident, we wouldn't provoke the bone beasts there. Other than that, they are very cunning. They are very good at disguising themselves. Once again, Xiao Xian looked at the sandy beach and changed his vision. Through the sand, he could see a very obvious giant skeleton under the sand. There was a bone beast there. It was no smaller than the dinosaur he saw earlier. As for the bone beast, just like Tao Jing said, its head looked like it was covered with a stone helmet made of premium stone. One look and Xiao Xian could tell that it was very tough. The bone beast was buried in the sand. Only its head was above the ground. It closed its eyes, pressed down its ears, narrowed its nostrils and slowed its breathing. At first glance, it looked like a normal rock on the ground. There were green moss and other plants on the rock. It looked very similar to the other rocks on the shore. Those who did not know about bone beasts would not have guessed that it was the head of a giant beast. Not only were they good at disguising themselves, but they also knew how to create a cover. If there weren't any big enough stones around them, they would look for some stones that were similar to their heads and kick them to the side of the river to make it look like they were real. It could be said that more than half of the rocks on the riverbank were brought over by the bone beasts. Otherwise, the rocks wouldn't all be so similar. There is a bone beast over there. Xiao Xian pointed at the rock. It seemed that bone beasts were solitary creatures. If they lived in groups, they would be much more dangerous. They would not even need to look at them. Tao Zheng looked in the direction Xiao Xian pointed. He could not tell which of the rocks was the bone beast's head. But why was Xiao Xian so sure? Hunting in the past was too dangerous. One of the reasons was that they could not pinpoint the exact location of the bone beast. If they got it wrong, the beast would attack them and they would be in a passive position. But if they could be sure, they just needed to prepare. They might be able to hunt it down. The thought of hunting the bone beast made Tao Zheng excited. They were young after all. They were more inclined to challenge. Are you sure? Tao Zheng asked again. Yes. After a pause, Tao Zheng asked again, are there any other bone beasts around here? No, there's only that one. But it's huge, even bigger than the dinosaur we caught in the tribe. Do you want to hunt it? Xiao Xian looked at Tao Zheng. Let me discuss it with everyone. After all, he was leading a team. Tao Zheng could not act on his own and ignore the wishes of others. If he wanted to hunt such a huge beast, he would have to rely on everyone. He could not do it alone. Tao Zheng told everyone about the matter. As Tao Zheng expected, everyone was very interested in hunting that giant beast. Moreover, if they could determine its specific location first, they wouldn't be in a passive position from the beginning. As long as they were prepared enough, even if the hunt failed, they could still escape unscathed. How can you be sure that's the bone beast? Zhui stared at Xiao Xian, questioning him. He ignored Tao Zheng's tug. The others had their doubts too, but they were not brave enough to voice it out loud. They could not be blamed for not believing him. Even the most experienced warriors in the tribe would not dare to make such a claim. So what if Xiao Xian was an elder? Why should they believe him just because he said so? Hunting was not a game. A single mistake could land them in trouble or even death. Xiao Xian did not answer Zhui's question directly. Instead, he looked around and pointed at the ground 2 steps away. There's a rock about this big. Xiao Xian gestured, describing the size and shape of the rock. Joy and the rest looked in the direction Xiao Xian was pointing at. There was a thick pile of rotten leaves. There were many fresh leaves and broken branches on top of it. Joy looked at Xiao Xian. Tao Jing nodded. Joy hurried over and pulled out his knife. He peeled away the leaves and branches, digging through a thin layer of soil to find a rock. It was exactly as Xiao Xian had described. Seeing this, Yu's eyebrows kept rising. So accurate? Chapter 383. Xiao Xian proved his conjecture. The others believed Xiao Xian's words. What do you think? Tao Zheng looked at Joy. Joy buried the rock with leaves again. Since we've decided, let's hunt. The bone beast was a huge temptation to them. A hunter who did not want to hunt good prey was not a good warrior. After confirming the hunt, Tao Zheng and the others retreated. They planned to have a good discussion before starting the hunt. If it was any other prey, they would not have needed such a discussion. They could have just attacked. They had worked together many times and were familiar with each other. But this was their first time hunting a bone beast. It was not part of their original plan. They had to be prepared. Unfortunately, time waits for no one. Just as they were discussing the plan, a bird flew down from the sky. It swooped across the water and picked up a fish. It circled in the air, looking for a rock to rest on. Tao Zheng and the others stared nervously at the long-necked bird and silently chanted in their hearts, fly away quickly. But the bird refused to leave. It stared at the rocks by the river. It was picky, trying to decide which one was the most comfortable to eat on. Tao Zheng and the others watched as the long-necked bird flew towards the bone beast's head with the fish in its beak. Everyone roared in their hearts, idiot! How could you pick that one? Even a crooked tree would be better than that rock. When the bird stepped on the bone beast's head, Tao Zheng and the others despaired. They wanted to shoot the bird to the side. Some of them even closed their eyes. They could not bear to watch. They were not afraid to see the bird being eaten. They were afraid to shoot it again. Such a great opportunity was ruined by a stupid bird just like that. If the bird had chosen another rock, the bone beast might not have been interested in it and would have continued to lie in wait. But if there was a prey on its head, even if it was a small one, the bone beast would not let it go. Roar! The beast's head, which was originally like an ordinary boulder on the riverbank, cracked open its big mouth full of barb-like fangs and bit down on the long-necked bird that dared to step on its head. The muffled roars of the beasts and the sharp and shrill cries of the birds mixed together. The other birds in the surrounding forest were collectively frightened and flew away while chirping. The young clawed beast that was eating a leaf twitched its ears and turned its head. It abandoned the tree and ran away. The bird's screeching stopped. The fish that the bird had picked up fell to the ground. It struggled to jump back into the river but was crushed by the bone beast's claws. The bone beast that was lying in ambush under the sand was like a small mountain. Its huge body suddenly appeared, and its short and sharp claws made the stones on the ground squeak. With the long-necked bird in its mouth, the bone beast's slow breathing was like a rolling boulder, striking everyone's hearts. When they saw the bone beast from afar, they did not have such a clear understanding of it. Now that they were not that close, the feeling was stronger than before. Xiao Xian leaped onto a tree and looked at the bone beast that had revealed its true form. The bone beast and the dinosaurs looked similar, but that was only in terms of shape. Overall, they were very different. One was a vegetarian, while the other was a carnivore. In terms of physique, the dino head was slightly fatter, while the bone beasts were more muscular. Compared to the dinosaur they caught before, it was like comparing a fat pig to a muscular bull. Of course, the bone beast's greatest defense was its stone-like bones. It was extremely resilient and made hunting it much more difficult. Tao Zheng and the rest whispered to each other as they watched the bone beast slowly munching on its food. What should we do now? Someone asked. He was unwilling to give up. Attack? They did not have absolute confidence. Before they could come up with anything, something had already happened. How troublesome. Tao Jing thought about it too. A few plans flashed through his mind, but he rejected them all. They were too dangerous. Even if they succeeded, there would be casualties in the team. That was not something he wanted to see. They were not at the point where they would risk their lives for a prey. Just as he was thinking, Tao Jing felt someone bump into him. He looked over and saw Feng Zheng retracting his elbow. His eyes swept across the area, signaling Tao Zheng to pay attention. Tao Zheng looked over and saw Xiao Xian observing something in the tree. He lowered his voice and asked, "Xiao Xian, what do you think?" Tao Zheng had to listen to this young elder's opinion. After all, he was powerful and had status in the tribe. "I'll try," Xiao Xian said. "What?" Tao Zheng rubbed his ears, as if he was hallucinating. "I'll try." Xiao Xian came down from the tree. Everyone looked at Xiao Xian. They did not look at him mockingly, but they did not think it was a good idea either. "Don't underestimate the bone beast," Tao Zheng said seriously. Many giant beasts appeared to be large in size and slow in movement, but when you really faced them, you would realize how powerful they were. "I know." The long-necked bird was fast, but the bone beast would use even more speed to catch the bird. That would depend on how fast it could catch the bird. Xiao Xian had a basic understanding of the bone beast's muscles and strength when it emerged from the ground. "I'll try first." "Don't worry, I know what I'm doing," Xiao Xian said. Tao Zheng, Zhui and the rest relaxed when they heard Xiao Xian's words. They wondered if Xiao Xian had other abilities. "Be careful. If you can't handle it, we'll go help and then retreat," Tao Jing said. "Okay. If I can't handle it, I'll tell you. But if I don't go," Xiao Xian added. Tao Jing hesitated and nodded. "Okay." Tao Zheng wanted to give his weapon to Xiao Xian, but Xiao Xian refused. "Thanks. I have it with me." Xiao Xian patted his bag and walked to the riverbank. Seeing Xiao Xian leave, a young warrior asked Tao Zheng, "What else does he have other than that black dagger?" "I don't know." Tao Zheng shook his head. "That dagger is made of stone, right?" Another warrior asked, worried. Tao Zheng sighed and stopped everyone from talking. "Let's wait and see." Looking at Xiao Xian quietly approaching the riverbank, everyone couldn't help but praise him in their hearts. He looked like a veteran. Maybe he really had a way. Then, they saw Xiao Xian hide in a tall tree by the riverbank. He paused for a while and then threw something out. It was not aimed at the bone beast. Was it a diversion? Everyone thought of a few strategies they had used before. They widened their eyes to watch and learn. But what happened next made their jaws drop. Xiao Xian charged out towards the bone beast. Seeing this scene, Tao Jing wished he could vomit blood. Was this what you meant by "don't worry"? Seeing how Xiao Xian dodged the beast's attacks, it was clear that he had the ability to dodge the beast's attacks, but he was still running around it. Let's keep watching. If we think something is wrong, Xiao Xian can escape. Plus, Xiao Xian did not ask us to interfere, Tao Jing said. What is he throwing? Wu Zhan, who had been silent, asked. A knife? A spear dart? It doesn't look like it. Why would he throw something other than his prey? Tao Jing shook his head. The thick clouds were still blocking Yang Guang's view. The forest was dark and they could not see everything clearly. However, they could not get too close either. Not only would they disrupt Xiao Xian's plan, they would also expose themselves to the beast's attack range. Thus, even if they had their own guesses, they could not go closer to take a look. On the other side, Xiao Xian ran a few steps vertically up the tree trunk and leapt up. Below, the bone beast opened its mouth wide, revealing a mouthful of sharp, hook-like teeth. Ah! A young warrior could not help but cry out. Moving in the air was not as easy as moving on land. It was difficult to dodge. Tao Zheng was about to rush over as well. Why didn't they ask for help at a time like this? Xiao Xian looked at the bone beast, who was waiting for its prey with its mouth wide open. He smiled. Sometimes, the switch between predator and prey happened in the blink of an eye. He had fallen into the trap. Xiao Xian was getting closer and closer to the beast's mouth. He could smell the beast's bloody breath and see the bird feathers between its teeth. But just as the bone beast was about to open its mouth to swallow the prey jumped up again. The anxious Tao Zheng and the rest did not see Xiao Xian fall directly into the beast's open mouth. Instead, they saw Xiao Xian jump up again when he was close to the beast's mouth. He jumped up again. How was that possible? Everyone widened their eyes, trying to get a better look. On the other side, not only did Xiao Xian jump up, he was also jumping up step by step. It was as if there were stairs in the air. The bone beast wasn't the only one who was dumbfounded. Tao Zheng and the others had their eyes popping out of their sockets. How was that possible? The wind blew. In the sky, the thick layers of clouds drifted, and the sunlight that had been blocked was once again revealed little by little. The golden rays of light once again swept through the forest. Tao Zheng and the rest saw thin lines reflecting the golden light around the beast. Lines? Xiao Xian was jumping up by stepping on lines. Were those the lines he had thrown out earlier? But why would Xiao Xian make those lines? Lines of golden light surrounded the bone beast. Xiao Xian had already jumped to the most suitable height. His timing was perfect. A rock rolled into his palm and slid between his fingers. With a flick of his finger, Xiao Xian shot out the small stone. Boom! The sound of the taut threads vibrating could be heard. It was as if a switch had been flipped. Immediately after, a series of rapid cutting sounds burst out. It was like the ear-piercing sound of fingernails scratching hard objects, causing Tao Zheng and the others to have goosebumps all over their bodies. They couldn't help but tremble. Like a loose cocoon, the bone beast was tightly bound by strings. The beast struggled with brute force. The more it struggled, the sharper the sound. There seemed to be the smell of burning wood in the air. Boom! Boom! Along with several sounds, some of the tall trees around the sandy land were cut down. Some of them were cut off from the ground, while others were cut off from the tree crown. Roar! The bone beast struggle broke a dozen trees, and it lost its balance and fell to the ground. This was the moment he had been waiting for. Xiao Xian didn't want to rely on these threads to completely tie up the beast. He just wanted to use this method to drag the beast down and trip it up. Xiao Xian was brought to a tree by the force of the silk thread. The totemic power in his body was at its peak, and even the mud on his face could not completely cover the exposed totemic patterns. The bulging muscles on his arms were constantly twitching, and his legs were gathering strength. His strength exploded in an instant, and the tree trunk under his feet made a soft cracking sound. His body was already pushed out. Xiao Xian was extremely fast. In a blink of an eye, he was in front of the beast and punched it. The beast that was tripped had just lifted its head when it saw the incoming punch. The shockwave from the punch made it squint its eyes. Boom! Tao Zheng and the others shuddered. They could tell from the sound of the punch that it was a powerful one. Joy looked at the bone beast whose head was buried in the sand. He thought of the dino head beast that was smashed into the ground back in the tribe. His facial muscles twitched. He did not see it with his own eyes back then. Now that he saw it with his own eyes, he was deeply moved. What a powerful punch! That, before Tao Zheng could finish his sentence, another punch came from the other side. The beast struggled to lift its head from the ground before it was smashed in again. Joy, who had experienced Xiao Xian's strength before, was speechless. Tao Zheng and the others' jaws dropped to the ground. They wanted to raise their arms and cheer, "All hail the elder." They watched as Xiao Xian rubbed his fists. He ran to the side and picked up a boulder that the beast was using to hide its head. He tossed it in the air and threw it again. The boulder cracked, but the beast's head was still fine. Still struggling. Fine, again. Tao Zheng and the rest couldn't help but feel sorry for the bone beast when they saw Xiao Xian throw one rock after another at it. Why did he have to collect so many stones? He deserved it. Chapter 385. The beast was knocked out and it looked like it would be out for a long time. Even if it woke up soon, there was no need to worry. Xiao Xian would hit it again when he sensed something was wrong. Besides, other than Xiao Xian, Tao Zheng and the others were watching too. Tao Zheng and the others walked over shakily. After making sure that the beast was really unconscious, they got boulder and tied it up with vines. They specifically used vines that were thick and tough to break, trapping the beast like a cocoon. Its bulging mouth was also tied up. Other than breathing, the bone beast could not move freely. The most it could do was move its hooves. Xiao Xian watched as Tao Zheng and the others touched the beast here and there after tying it up. Some of the bolder ones even lifted the beast's mouth to look at its teeth. The unconscious beast's head muscles were relaxed. Other than the armor-like shell covering most of its body, parts like its mouth and nostrils were still soft. The weaknesses that had been sealed during battle were now exposed. After touching it, the group worked together to drag the unconscious beast to a resting place. Although the hunting teams had split up to hunt, the resting place was still the same. They had to carry such a huge beast to a resting place before hunting other prey. The beast was huge, but the Yinjiao people were strong too. If one person could not carry it, they would pull it together. If they could not carry it, they would carry it together. Xiao Xian, is everyone in your tribe as strong as you? Are there a lot of advanced totemic warriors our age? Tao Zheng asked after a while. The others with Tao Zheng also looked at Xiao Xian. Most of them lived near the top of the mountain, so they knew more than the others. Some of the information came from their own inquiries, while some came from their elders. For example, they learned about Xiao Xian's true origins from their elders. It was no wonder Tao Zheng asked that. If they knew that the other Yanjiao tribe was as strong as Xiao Xian, they would be under a lot of pressure. They used to think that they were strong in their own tribe, but Xiao Xian's appearance was a huge shock. Xiao Xian smiled and shook his head when he heard Tao Zheng's question. No, there aren't many young advanced totemic warriors. However, there are still many powerful people. Tao Zheng and the others relaxed when they heard Xiao Xian say that there were not many advanced totemic warriors. As expected, there were not many people like Xiao Xian. Xiao Xian was an elder after all. He was the only elder in all the Yanjiao tribes combined. Along the way, if they found other prey that they were satisfied with, they would put the bone beast down and go hunting. After all, they could carry more prey with them. Xiao Xian gave the others the chance to hunt while he watched over the beast in case it woke up and caused trouble. While Tao Zheng and the rest were hunting, Xiao Xian noticed the bone beast was waking up. He found a large rock nearby and hit it hard to make it faint again. Resting place. After a day of hunting, many hunting groups would go there to take a rest. Some of them who had gone further away might spend the night outside, but most of them would still go to the resting place, so that they could sleep peacefully. The tribe's resting place in this forest was on a mountain. The trees on the mountain were not too dense. There were caves, both natural and man-made. They could store some smaller prey and were enough for everyone in the hunting team to take a rest. The easier prey would be slaughtered in other places and then moved into the cave. The more troublesome prey, such as the dino head from last time, would be tied up and brought back. Then, everyone would discuss how to divide it. A few tribesmen stood outside the rested area, keeping an eye on the forest in case other beasts attacked. The people standing on higher ground saw movement in the forest and whistled to the people below, signaling them to pay attention. Soon, they realized that it wasn't a ferocious beast that had attacked. Instead, it was their own people who had brought their prey over, and it was a big guy. When the tribesmen got closer, they realized it was Tao Zheng's group. Everyone in the tribe knew how strong Tao Zheng and the others were. Every time they went hunting, Tao Zheng's team would always catch a lot of good prey. There was no point in being envious. After all, their strength was there. Tao Zheng, Zhui, and Wu Zhan, these three outstanding young warriors, were famous even in other tribes. Tao Zheng, what did you hunt this time? The guard outside was about to ask Tao Zheng, who was walking at the front, but when he saw the prey they brought out, he was so shocked that he stopped talking. Bone beast? The two guards shouted in shock. What? Bone beast? The others heard and ran over to take a look. It wasn't that no one had ever caught a bone beast before. It was just that compared to other prey, it was too rare. Most of the time, they spent a lot of time and effort only to end up with nothing. If they weren't careful, they would pay a heavy price. To their surprise, Tao Zheng's team managed to hunt a bone beast this time. They counted the number of people in the team. None of them were missing. Not even the slightest bit of injury. Under everyone's gazes, Tao Zheng and the others couldn't help blushing. They hadn't hunted the bone beast, and they hadn't even had a chance to attack it. As for the small injuries on their bodies, they were from hunting other prey. They had nothing to do with the bone beast. Elder Xiao Xian caught it, said Tao Zheng. The others didn't believe him. To them, how could Xiao Xian hunt this beast alone? This wasn't a baby bone beast. But with Tao Zheng's team explaining, the others were curious too. They helped to move the bone beast to a safer spot and asked curiously. There were 3 girls in Tao Zheng's group. They didn't have to be so tense and were much more active. Lin, did Xiao Xian really hunt this beast? One of the warriors asked. Of course. The girl named Lin excitedly told the others about Xiao Xian's hunt. Xiao Xian had already been pulled aside by Duo Kong for questioning. Duo Kong didn't care if he could hunt a bone beast or not. He had hunted one when he was younger, but it was done as a team. Right now, Duo Kong was more concerned about Xiao Xian's condition and whether he was injured. The chief and shamaness had warned him before they left. They asked about the details of the hunt and Xiao Xian answered all of them. Duo Kong was relieved when he heard that Xiao Xian had adapted well. He even asked Xiao Xian to learn about the herbs they brought back from the hunt. Xiao Xian had learned about herbs from Ji Ju. The plants in the forest were unfamiliar. Different places had different types of plants. After learning about the herbs and eating barbecued meat, everyone fell asleep after a day of hunting. The guards outside took turns to keep watch. After a good night's sleep, they woke up the next day feeling relaxed and not tired at all. Xiao Xian walked out of the cave and looked at the forest in the distance. He took a deep breath, stretched his arms and stretched his body. Naturally, there would be people guarding the prey in the hunting grounds. They were all experienced hunters, so Xiao Xian didn't have to worry. The next day's hunt was about to begin. They had to continue hunting. As winter approached, there would be fewer animals. They had to be prepared. Chapter 386. Every year when winter approached, the tribe would go out to hunt more frequently. If it weren't for the limited manpower, they would definitely hunt for longer periods of time. Because every year when winter approached, the tribe would prepare animal skins and let people take them to the slave owners to sell, and then buy some other things. When the weather turned cold, the slave owners who lived far away from the mountains and forests would have an increased demand for animal skins. Relying on their slaves alone, they couldn't prepare much good stuff, so they still had to get it from the tribesmen. Especially those with good fur and good leather, the price of selling them was more than twice as high as other times. Food, bronze, and other things that the tribe couldn't produce themselves, they would use this method to exchange for them. If the family had the means, they would buy some rare things from the slave owners and bring them back. All of this required the support of prey. Before going to bed yesterday, Xiao Xian heard many people in the team discussing what to exchange for furs. They also asked Xiao Xian, but Xiao Xian hadn't been to the slave owner's territory, so he couldn't say why. He could only wait and see. On the second day of hunting, before the sun was completely out, each team had already set off. Following Tao Zheng's team, Xiao Xian quickly passed through the mountains. Sometimes, after a short pause, Tao Zheng would introduce some of the surrounding terrain to Xiao Xian. This was the hunting route that their team often took. Xiao Xian memorized all the dangerous places, ferocious beasts, and dangerous or medicinal plants around. When they passed by a dry river, Xiao Xian's footsteps suddenly stopped and looked over there. Seeing Xiao Xian stop, the others also stopped. After yesterday's hunting, the people in the team wouldn't underestimate Xiao Xian. In terms of strength, even the stubborn Zhui had to admit that Xiao Xian was a little stronger than them. "What's wrong?" Tao Zheng asked. Looking at the dry riverbed, they didn't find anything strange. They had been here many times and were very familiar with it. Xiao Xian stared in that direction. "You guys wait here. I'll go take a look." With that, he quickly walked over. There were no dangerous fierce beasts around, so Tao Zheng simply walked over and asked, "What did you find?" Xiao Xian remained silent. He wasn't sure either. The riverbed here was 20 to 30 meters wide, and it seemed to be wider in the distance, but it was not deep. During the rainy season, the river will rise, but at the end of the year, the river level will drop and dry up. Tao Zheng explained to Xiao Xian, "There's water here most of the year, but it's only dry at the end of the year. But when there's water here, we won't get close. Because there are some dangerous fish here." Xiao Xian walked to the side and didn't go down. He looked at the dry riverbed, but if he stepped in, he would sink right in. The bottom was soft mud, but the top of the mud was dry and cracked. Weeds grew out of the cracks in the mud, and they were growing quite well. However, Xiao Xian wasn't interested in that. His target was the rocks on the riverbed. "Do you have a spear? Let me borrow it." Xiao Xian turned around and asked someone to lend him a tool. "Use mine." Duo Li hurriedly handed over the spear he always carried. "Thanks." Xiao Xian took the spear and picked up the nearest rock on the riverbed. The stones exposed from the riverbed were lifted up high by the spearhead and flew towards Xiao Xian. After catching the rock, Xiao Xian wiped away some of the dry mud on the surface of the rock and carefully examined it. He rubbed his fingers on the rock to feel it. "What's different about these rocks?" Tao Zheng asked. In his opinion, these rocks were no different from other rocks. They weren't big either, so they couldn't be made into stone tools. Xiao Xian shook his head. "It's just a guess." After picking up 2 more rocks, Xiao Xian put the 3 fist-sized rocks into his animal skin bag. Then, he walked along the riverbed and looked into the distance. "The scary fish you're talking about, the ones with hard scales, sharp teeth, 4 claws, and a long tail. Are they the ones that can swim in the water and walk on land?" Xiao Xian asked. Before Tao Zheng could answer, Duo Li and the others nodded. Yes, that's it." "Xiao Xian, you've seen them before." At first, they wanted to hunt some of those fish, but then they realized that they were too dangerous and there were too many of them. So, when the weather was warm and the water level in the river rose, they would avoid this place. At the end of the year, when the river dried up and the fish left, they would come back. Touching the animal skin bag with the rocks, Xiao Xian asked again, "Where does this river lead to?" The others didn't know the answer to this question, but Tao Zheng did. He heard it from an old hunter who used to come here. It said that there's an even wider river ahead. That river can cut through the entire forest. If you follow that river, you might see the sea. But it's too far and no one in the tribe has seen it before. I only heard it from some tribesmen who came from there. Into the sea? Xiao Xian lowered his head in thought. Xiao Xian stopped because he felt that the rocks on the bed looked familiar. He held one in his hand and felt that the texture was familiar too. That year, when he brought the tribe across the river and left the drumming tribe, a crocodile gave him a rock. It was said that the drumming tribe's water moon stones came from that rock. The drumming tribe had never been here before, so they couldn't have anything to do with this place. But crocodiles were different. Maybe the drumming tribe's crocodiles wouldn't come here, but what about other crocodiles? Were there other crocodiles like the drumming tribe that picked up rocks from the sea and spat them into the river? That was hard to say. Let's go, Xiao Xian said. The team still had to continue hunting. They couldn't be delayed because of him. Duo Li looked at the leaving team and the rocks on the bed. He ran over and picked one up with his spear. Ever since he saw Xiao Xian fight the bone beast alone, Duo Li was impressed by this young elder who wasn't much older than him. He believed in Xiao Xian's abilities. Since Xiao Xian thought that the rocks were strange, he brought one himself to study. Maybe he could find something. The others saw what Duo Li did and wondered if they should bring one too. But the team had already left and it wasn't convenient to go back. Whatever, they'd come back next time. There was still one more hunt before winter anyway. Other than Xiao Xian's unique way of hunting the bone beast on the first day, they went back to their old ways for the next few days. The Yanjiao people valued individual ability, but they also valued teamwork. Xiao Xian, Tao Zheng and the rest hunted some good prey. Other than that, Xiao Xian also used vines to weave a net and caught a few tapirs. The tapirs they caught were one of the smaller species of tapirs. They were normal animals that could be eaten. They were very timid and would run away at the slightest movement. They hid in a hidden spot with dense foliage and only came out when the danger was over. They had different colored patterns on their skin and looked like they were wearing camouflage clothing. When they hid in the bushes, it was hard to spot them. The babies of these tapirs were even more timid, so they weren't as curious as other animals. They would stick close to their mother and never leave alone. This way of survival allowed this seemingly harmless species to survive until now. Tao Zheng and the rest didn't care about prey like these, but Xiao Xian caught one. It was a female tapir with a litter of babies. When they were discovered, they were being chased by predators and ran into Xiao Xian's net. Xiao Xian caught them all. Xiao Xian didn't eat these normal animals. He caught them as gifts. Hunting time was over and the teams were almost done with their prey. It was time to return to the tribe. Everyone gathered at the resting area and sorted out the prey of their respective teams before carrying them back. The route from the resting area to the tribe overlapped with the route of the Taiha tribe. Although the territories of the two tribes were different, and the hunting areas were also different, this section of the road was shared. It was flat and easy to walk on, suitable for teams with prey. The path was made by walking. The hunting teams of the two tribes often stepped on it and the trees and grass in the way were all cut down. Duo Kong was in a good mood because of the good harvest and the successful hunt. He opened his mouth and roared. The others also sang along. With so many people singing together, the burst of energy had a certain deterrent effect on the nearby beasts. No beasts came close. When they went out, they weren't so arrogant because they didn't want to chase away their prey. But when they came back, they didn't have to worry. At the Y-shaped intersection, the Taiha people were carrying their prey onto the shared path. When they heard the singing from the Yanjiao team, the leader was disgusted. Why are we meeting them again? His good mood had been ruined. Leader. Yanjiao, don't worry about them. The leader's face was wooden. Keep walking and pretend they don't exist. However, the Yanjiao people's presence was too strong. They couldn't ignore them even if they wanted to. When the Flaming Horn tribesmen reached the public walkway from the other side of the road, the two teams met up. Duo Kong glanced at the prey brought by the Taiha team and let out a strange laugh. Ha ha. The Taiha team leader's face darkened. What, are you looking down on us? Oh, no, I'm not looking down on you. Really, Duo Kong said. Then, he turned around and yelled, Duo Li, take your prey and walk faster. Why are you taking so long with that small amount of prey? The people behind him didn't say anything. They seemed to have formed a tacit agreement. After Duo Kong said that, Xiao Xian noticed that the people in the team were energized. Then, Duo Li and the others carried the bone beast and walked quickly to the front of the team. Seeing the huge bone beast, the Taiha people were speechless. The leader's face twitched and turned green. Xiao Xian was happy to see this. He carried the prey and chased after them. On the other side, the Taiha team leader was about to retort when he heard an behind him. He forgot what he wanted to say. What ah! The leader turned around and roared. Ignoring the leader's expression, a young warrior jumped out and pointed at Xiao Xian. Leader! It's him! You're tuning into the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.